What's good, IB Nation? Welcome to another edition of the Irish Breakdown podcast. It's Brian Driscoll. I'm Vince D'Addario, and it is time for the first, upon further review, of the 2024 season. And as we always say, Brian, it is always better to jump into the film when it is after a win. And in this case, a big win for Notre Dame on the road, College Station, all of the things, right? Mm-hmm. Big win for Notre Dame, 1-0. We're going to break it down for you. We had some fun with this one. You know, a lot of mistakes, a lot of things to clean up. But as we always say, it's so much easier to clean things up after a win than it is after a loss. And so we'll get into it. It's going to be a lot of fun, but we'll get into it.
It's actually, Vince, in response to that, because this was a phenomenal weekend. Saturday was great, and Sunday night was also great. By the way,
even better.
Yeah, I had some fun, and I was very petty after that game. I jumped.
You were actually more so than usual,
and I also got into a chat of an LSU show, and was
no, you didn't.
A little bit. I did. I did.
They
even brought me up they were like, "There's no way that's the real Brian Driscoll," and I was like, "Yeah, it's me." It's funny because I got my notes. I'm like, okay, what I like and don't like, and on the defense, I'm like, dude, I'm on level 2 of this now. There's so many things from the defense I'm like picking apart. Like, got to do better there, got to do better there, got to do better there. I'm thinking, holy crap. Now this team with 246 yards and 3.6 yards per play and 3.3 yards per pass attempt, and I'm sitting there picking all these things I got to get better at.
Right.
Like, that's a pretty good place to be, Vince.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and a lot of it has to do with you have very good coaching and great answers, and we'll get into a lot of that. But you also have a really talented football team, and that was very evident on Saturday, Vince. And I know we'll kind of dive into an overview of the show, but that was very evident that this was a very talented football team and a very confident football team, which was also a big part of this. Is that you'd have thought this game was being played at Notre Dame Stadium, the way that A&M reacted to certain things and the way that A&M handled certain situations and the fact that they got tired at the end of the game. You'd have thought they were the team coming from the quote-unquote cooler climate down to the hotter area.
Yeah,
it was just an impressive all-around performance. And, of course, it's being downplayed by mainly ESPN, which I told you all before the game. I told you guys all the last 2 weeks, if Notre Dame wins, it will not be, holy crap, they're better than you thought. The only people that are doing that are, like, non-ESPN people like Joel Klatt, and there's a couple people like that. But most of it's like, well, A&M's not as good as we thought, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
So don't care. You know, they did what they needed to do. But overall, Vince, excellent win for Notre Dame this weekend.
So let's kind of go over how this show is going to be put together. And it's slightly different than in past years. And so I want to make sure everybody understands that. So, we're going to go through this thing. We're going to revisit the keys to victory, right? And so if you are, smart and you were on the irishbreakdown.com and you read the keys to victory offensively, keys to victory defensively before the game,
our show on Thursday,
or watch the show on Thursday, you know what those keys were. So we're going to revisit those keys. And we kind of did this last year, I think in the second half of the season more than the first half, but we like that segment. We're going to keep it. So we're going to revisit those.
How did they live up to this? Right. And was it as impactful as we thought it was?
Exactly. So we'll talk about keys to the offense, keys to the defense, and then we will jump into the offense specifically. Okay. What we liked, what we didn't like, things of that nature. And then of course the defense as well. If you want to get a question in, you are more than welcome to submit a super chat. This is not a mailbag situation, but super chats are always welcome. Always appreciate that. We'll always hit those at the end. But there's not going to be a mailbag at the end or anything like that. For the evening shows, that's usually how we go about things. So you should be used to that. but it always super chats are always welcome, and you guys have been awesome with that from the post game show as well as even IB Nation Sports Talk earlier. We had a bunch of super chats, which was awesome.
Got one right here from DK. Oh. Give this to Vince. Huge super chat. Give this to Vince. Homeboy's doing double duty on a holiday. Just glad you survived the Texas heat, Brian. I did. It wasn't as I keep telling people it was hotter in Indiana last week than it was in Texas when I was down there.
Crazy.
So, but yeah, there we go. There we go. There's awesome. One of those super chats right there. So drop those super chats. Thanks, and we'll either respond to them all at the end or we'll bring them up here as we get in. So, like, there's another super chat, Vince, as we kind of kick off this next overview of the entire game segment.
Yeah,
that I'm going to bring up that kind of fits into it. So that's what we'll do that too. Is when it's pertinent to kind of what we're discussing, we'll try to fit it in during the show.
Perfect. So let's jump into this thing. Your overall thoughts as you went back, you're looking at the film offensively, defensively, special teams, like you're looking at the whole film, you're going back. I'll ask the big overarching question. Do you have different thoughts after watching the film as opposed to watching it live? And then your overall thoughts on the game in general after watching the film as well?
A lot different, to be honest with you. A lot less pleased with the execution, even more so than I was during the game. Even more encouraged by that reality, however. Because you look at it and say, boy, there was a lot. We talked about this on Saturday night, Vince, and into Sunday morning. Yeah, there's mistakes and you got to clean it up, but there was even more than I thought. I mean, this game could have got ugly early for Texas A&M, meaning what Notre Dame could have done with them. But there was just a ton of miscues and mistakes and like little things, not like big things like, oh, it might take you a month to figure this out, but just like little things, a lot more than I anticipated. But then at the same time, you're sitting there saying, like, some of the stuff is the reason I didn't think they were mistakes is because of how nothing came of it. Mm-hmm. And like one of the things, and I'll just say it now because it kind of applies to both sides of the ball. But like one of my things for the defense was, man, there were times where I was like, okay, great job, great being in position. And then you go back and watch the film and you're thinking, dude, they got out leveraged. Like they were not where they needed to be. And in past teams, if they would have had that same situation happen, that ball's getting up the corner for a big play. There was a particular play, I believe it was Jalen Sneed, completely got just stared at the backfield too long, and then it bounced, and it was like a 2-yard gain. Because when he went, he went. You know what I mean? It's just like he was so fast to the ball that it just was like, dude, he didn't even read it correctly, but it didn't matter. I mean, and those things are going to – I mean, there was plays where like that happened with Drake and Kingston and a lot of those guys. But when you break it down, you realize how many more mistakes there actually were and how much more they have to clean up. And then when you're like, but they outgained A&M by over 100 yards and should have had at least another 100, if not more, and should have probably taken about 30 or 40 at least off if they don't do silly things. Like, that game could have got ugly. And I know there's like a lot of A&M fans like, if this, if that. I'm like, guys, you were lucky to be in that game. That's what I realized after watching the film. And I did not anticipate being that. Having said that, I will say this. That doesn't take anything away from Texas A&M. They're a good football team. I watched a lot of football last night, watched a lot of football today, Vince. Mm-hmm. Texas A&M is going to win a lot of football games this year.
I agree.
They just ran into a buzzsaw on Saturday. They're a team in game one of a new system on both sides of the ball with the brand new head coach, and they went up against a team that is just ready to roll.
Sure.
And, you know, Notre Dame was able to adjust a lot quicker on both sides of the ball because they have a group of players that are better, that know the systems better, especially on defense, that allow them to acclimate and make adjustments better.
To your point about Texas A&M and what they could look like by the end of the season, I completely agree with you. And this is actually the first time that I looked at their schedule and what they've got coming up. It's a very manageable SEC schedule. I will say that. I think there's a lot of potential wins on that team. Now, they got stuff to clean up too. Don't get me wrong. But the defense alone for Texas A&M will keep them in games, if not win them games on their schedule.
Their offensive line play a lot better as well than I thought.
Yeah, they really did.
And I'm not – we're not saying this – or at least I'm not. I won't speak for you, Vince. But I'm not saying this in 2 months. Like, I'll be honest. This summer I had said I'm glad we're playing this team in the opener.
Yeah, for sure.
Or Notre Dame's playing this team in the opener and not in November. I don't feel that way now. And that has nothing to do with Texas A&M. That's just Notre Dame has a lot. They're going to be a lot better in November too.
Yeah, for sure.
Because you just realize when you're watching the game how young they are
right
at a lot of spots. And not just young at spots, but like even some of their quote unquote older guys are new.
They don't have experience. Yeah, exactly.
Right. And those things kept them from just being a second late to see this, a second late to see that. And there's a lot of room for improvement. But at the end of the day, Notre Dame was the smaller team, but they were the stronger team, the more physical team, the faster team, and the better prepared team, coaching-wise and conditioning-wise. And they were much more prepared. Like, one of the big issues we've had in the past, Vince, with Notre Dame when they've gone on the road is they don't handle the environment well at all. And this has been true for a long time. I mean, not reacting to a hurricane. You know, what was there was games where Notre Dame on the road would get like a delay a game on like the first play of the game. Remember that under Brian Kelly?
So frustrating, yes.
And there'd be times where it's just like, you know, like even thinking last year, you know, against Duke, how many false starts did their fifth-year senior center have in the first half against Duke? And those things weren't issues. Like, this team handled the environment much better, which speaks to me that this team is a team that has very impressive leadership. Yeah. And that's something we said we won't really know till we get into the season.
Sure.
This is step one, because this team was ready to play this game. This team did not allow the environment, the noise, the crowd to phase them at all. At all. And there's a lot of reasons why. I think they're a better prepared football team. They have now much more continuity from a coaching standpoint. I mean, outside of Mike Denbrock, they don't have anybody new. I mean, Chris O'Leary left and he was replaced by someone that was already there, essentially. And not only just in the secondary, but also just overall in the staff, because then, you know, Max Bullock gets promoted.
Right.
The rest of it's Mike Denbrock and Mike Brown. But Mike Brown coached them in the bowl game. Right. I mean, so he's a little bit more familiar than Mike Denbrock is. And I think that helped them a ton as well. And you finally, and you're seeing the benefits of having a staff that knows Marcus Freeman. And what I mean by that is not like his guys versus other guys and people that have his back. And I mean, that's always true. You want to have people, Vince. I mean, how many times have you and I talked about this with Irish Breakdown? You need to make sure you have people on your staff that
you trust,
that take pride in
doing
right by Irish Breakdown, right?
Yep.
But it's more so of they know his expectations and they can then carry it out within their rooms. And that doesn't just come from people that have known him for a long time, like Denbrock and Gino Gaduli and Mike Brown and guys like that. It also comes down like Al Washington, who only coached with Marcus Freeman for a year at Cincinnati. That's it. But he's now been at Notre Dame for 3 years with him. You know, Mike Mickens and him coached together for a long time. Max Bulla and Al Golden did not. They didn't know who Marcus Freeman was prior to them coming to Notre Dame. Or they knew who he was, but they didn't know him. They didn't work with him prior to that. Correct. And now they do. Now Al Golden spent hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of, hopefully thousands of hours talking football and expectations with Marcus Freeman. So I think Joe Rudolph didn't have a relationship with Marcus Freeman prior to coming to Notre Dame. Now he does. And you just kind of, Dylan McCullough. Now he's in year 3. So I think all those things played off. This was just a team that was much more prepared to handle the environment than they have been in the past in these similar moments. Now, what we don't know is will they do it the next time they're in this moment? And that's still something that you can't answer in one game. If the concern is you look great one week and then not the next, you can't answer that in one game.
Correct.
So we're going to have to wait till the Louisville game and then Georgia Tech and, some of those moments. But this is a step in the right direction. Let's go ahead.
What I was going to say was, look, I don't think we've had as big of an issue with, Marcus Freeman getting his teams ready for a big game. Right. They haven't always won those games. And that's a different conversation. But like what I'm saying is, how do they respond next week? Now, the Marshalls of the world or however you want to do it.
I agreed with you until Louisville and Clemson last year. That would be my that was our thing in the first year. It was like, look, they were ready for the big games. They were mentally and emotionally ready for Ohio State. They just weren't physically good enough to beat Ohio State.
Correct.
They were ready for BYU. They were ready for Syracuse. They were ready for North Carolina. They were ready for Clemson. They were ready for USC. They just couldn't stop Caleb Williams. It was
a personnel problem.
It was the
too.
Marshall game that they weren't there for. It was Stanford. It was
Right.
UNLV. That's what I mean. They couldn't stop them. Like they didn't have, but still, it wasn't that they weren't ready to play that game.
Right.
They played hard. They just couldn't bring them down in the backfield. And they were missing some guys. No excuses. USC that day was better than Notre Dame.
Sure.
And so it was the lower games that. And then last year, it's like, look, they were ready to play NC State. They were ready to play Ohio State. They didn't execute, but they were ready to play. When they basically went through the motions against Louisville, that was the first sign. Like, okay, this is not a. And then the same thing against Clemson. So that'll get answered down the road. But another point, Vince, is those two games is also where a lot of the crying about they don't win games like this and they don't play well on the road. And I'd say, look, they played well against North Carolina. They played well against Ohio State 2 years ago. They played well at Syracuse. But it's because the two most recent road games against good teams, they laid a couple eggs. Okay, that's gone. So I don't need to hear that they don't win games like this anymore.
Right.
They do. Now they're going to have to show they can do it consistently.
Sure.
But the reality is they're not going to play another true road game against a good team until the last game of the regular season.
Yeah.
Because Georgia Tech, they play in Mercedes-Benz. So that was an important thing for me, Vince, is to see this team, how this team handled the moment. Like they didn't play great early, but it was this typical first game, getting used to the flow of the game. There was no, like when A&M goes down and scores, there was no, offense comes right back down and ties it up, and defense started answering, and they were fine. But even then, we'll get into that later. But that was the big thing for me. And this is one of the super chats I wanted to bring up, Vince, that kind of plays into it. This is from Indy Fanatics 90. He said, Freeman is no longer a new head coach. Thank you for the super chat, by the way. His staffing hires, the team's physical and mental toughness, playing mostly fundamentally sound football, and the in-game decisions are all signs of really good, if not great head coach. Indy's future is bright. The great part we'll have to find out. And the thing about the fundamentally sound is there were a lot of fundamental mistakes in this game, but you could tell those things were being done outside the structure of what they were normally doing, which is going to happen at times in openers. And it was mostly younger guys that were making some of those mistakes.
And it was also not atmosphere induced.
Right.
For the most part. Now, like the Pendleton full start late, that was.
Right.
But they had 11 penalties. That's not good. But they were not penalties.
Offsides, defensive pass interference, offensive pass interference because your tight end leaked too far down the field. That's not an environment. That's not the crowd is too loud. I didn't know I was past the line of scrimmage. That's a sophomore making a sophomore mistake.
Right. Exactly.
And
two guys jumping off sides in the first series. Is that atmosphere? You could say it's atmosphere, but these guys were jacked.
I think they were just. I think you're right.
Yes.
The atmosphere. That's true on offense, Vince. But I don't know if defense isn't too anxious because of the atmosphere. And also they're usually quieter when the defense is on the field because they don't want to get too loud for their own offense.
Fair.
And I just think they were just pinning their ears back, trying to make plays. And I actually think that hurt them a little bit as the game went on, because I think there's a couple times that I felt like they didn't want to jump off sides again, so they were maybe a little late reacting.
A little hesitant, yeah.
But the point to him is like, look, they were physically ready. They were physically tough. They showed mental toughness. I mean, and part of it is like players love emotion from coaches if it's genuine.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Not like, just as an example, like pounding on the table after a press conference in a really forced attempt to try to send a message to your team. Just as a random example that means absolutely nothing about what happened last night. But they want to see real emotion. And when they're kind of walking out and they're playing that song and it's just like, okay, and then all of a sudden Freeman just loses it. I mean, he just turns around. It's like, did you see the video, Vince? He's just kind of
like it. Yeah.
He's just kind of nodding. I mean, that's what I do. It's kind of, okay, I'm feeling it. I'm ready to go. And then all of a sudden he turns around. It's like, he's just going. I'm like, okay, Marcus just lost it. Coach Freeman. But it was like, but did you see
totally
Emil
genuine.
Wagner's reaction? Emil was like, let's go. I mean,
exactly.
It was genuine. It was genuine.
But that's who he is, though, right? I mean,
exactly. He's like John at the
crowd.
Yeah, I mean, but it was real. It was, and it sent a message. Hey, we're backing down from no one.
Correct.
And it's kind of like the fight against Miami, and then Lou Holtz has saved Jimmy Johnson's you know what for me.
Right.
It was like,
genuine.
We're not backing down from anybody. Matter of fact, we're taking the fight to them.
And that's what it felt like the entire game to me.
But here's the thing, Vince. That only happens because they were prepared for that. That was that final let's go. Like, they weren't timid of the moment. And then when he went off, they were then ready. He went off because of how fired up they had been and how hard they'd been going all camp. And now it's just like, I can't hold it in anymore. And that's how the players were. And that's where I think the offsides came from. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like, that's where some of those things came from. Is
that was the first drive of the game. Like,
right.
That was the defense was the first team on the field. Like, that was the first drive of the game. Yeah.
Boom.
Yeah. Right. And here's and I said this on the show earlier today. It's like, look, this is who Marcus Freeman is. Like, we see this, juiced up Marcus Freeman at practice. I've seen him when he's watching his kid play. Like, that's genuine, whereas other coaches, they try to manufacture emotion. Like somebody else we saw in a post-game press conference. Like, this isn't manufactured. This is genuine. And look, kids are smart, right? I coach high school kids. You coach college kids. Like, they know when you're being genuine. And
my college kids are only a year older than your high school kids.
That's what I'm saying.
They're high school kids with a couple extra months on them. Right?
Correct. Like, these kids know, right? When I'm in a classroom, they know when I'm BSing them, and they know when I'm not. Okay.
Right.
So you can't manufacture that. When I saw that video after the game was over, I think it was yesterday morning, probably. Like, it was like, you know what? That's Marcus Freeman, and the kids know it, and that's why. Go all the way back to when he got the job and he came into the locker room and he was all jacked up. Like, that's genuine. I've seen other teams try to kind of recreate that, and it's not genuine because that's not who that guy is, So I was all for it because I know that that's who he is.
Right. But that's the point. You've got to be, you and I have talked about this all the time. You got to be you.
Yes, exactly.
Right. As a coach, you've got to be you. And like, so like I could relate to certain players because when I was younger, because like, okay, but we kind of come from a similar background. I don't care what I look like, and I don't care what you look like. We come from similar backgrounds. You know what I mean? Like, we have similar interests. There's things, I'm not some 45-year-old guy walking in the locker room, talking about, hey man, did you hear the latest album from? No, guys, I'm 46 years old. Like, you and I have nothing in common except I love y'all, you love me, and we love football, right? And we love this institution. Like, that's all we have in common.
Right.
The music I listened to was, I'm now that old guy that listens to music that was out before kids were born. That's now what I listen to. It's got to be genuine. Kids will respect you if you're yourself. That's why kids could relate so well to Nick Saban into his 70s, because Nick Saban is who he is. He's not going to change for you. You know what I mean? He is who he is, but you know exactly where he stands. So when you saw the team kind of come out that way, you could tell, Vince, it's like they were ready to explode. And then when he goes, it's like, okay, guys, it's okay to let her rip. It's okay. We came here to fight. And you know what I mean? That in the right way. And those are things that you kind of look at, Vince, and say, this is a team that has a little bit of a different swagger than it did maybe last year.
Right. Absolutely.
I actually think last year's team had similar swagger in certain areas. But I think this year's team has it, but they're more prepared to really carry it out in the bigger moments. And there were plenty of times that this team could have folded. Mm-hmm. And here we go. They took the first score. We supposedly have this great defense, and they take this first score right down the field and get points. And our offense can't do this, can't do that. Offense isn't moving the ball. They go down and score, and you're thinking as a player, like, well, here we go again. That's not how they thought at all. Defense made stops. Offense gets the ball back 2 drives later. They go down and make plays and score. And there was at no point in time did you ever feel like they're shook or they're rattled or they've lost momentum and they don't have answers. And that's really a telling thing about a team that's able to do that in the first game of the year. I mean, we saw a team last night, and this isn't even meant to take a shot at Brian, but we saw a team last night in LSU that has some veteran players at key spots that kind of didn't handle the moment well. First team preseason All-American left tackle talking about this is going to be a fight and all this other kind of stuff. Experienced 3-year starter gets 2 false starts last night. Their preseason All-American veteran had more false starts than Notre Dame's true freshman left tackle. Right?
And right tackle combined.
They weren't able to make the plays. Exactly. Yeah. They weren't prepared to handle that moment because they don't have the person leading them that can prepare them for that moment, because they don't think that guy has their back the way that these kids think that their head coach has their back, and it has to be every day. And that's what we saw from this football team. That was the biggest takeaway, Vince, beyond all the stuff that's got to get cleaned up. That stuff, why we're spending time on it, that stuff is so important, because that's the stuff that if you can keep it up each week, then all of a sudden now it comes down to is talent.
Mm-hmm.
If you can, and this is what you and I said, this is the frustration with last year, Vince. You are the more talented team, but you didn't play hard against Louisville, which allowed their inferior roster to out-fight you and out-hit you and out-hustle you and Notre Dame, Clemson, you had the better roster. You had the better roster if they were 100% healthy. You definitely had the better roster when they were down 8 starters. But they wanted it more than you did. They handled adversity more than you did. They made their chances. They made their opportunities, and your team didn't. And Notre Dame didn't always do that. Last Saturday night, we saw a team that had that, Vince, that said, hey, bring whatever you want. Do whatever stupid yell that you want to yell. Do whatever, because we're going to come in here. This is our place. I mean, you saw it in the video, Mike Denbrock. I'm sorry, Vince. The video where Mike Denbrock, I think he said, this is what we came down here for.
Correct.
This is why we're here.
Right.
Marcus Freeman, did you see? This is we practiced this moment on Wednesday, fellas.
Right. 4th and 2. This is the
moment we prepared for.
Right.
It wasn't dig deep and get in your soul and you'll remember. Like, those are great movie quotes. It's one of the greatest movie quotes ever is Coach Yost. They get all past line scrum. I'm yanking every one of you out. They don't gain another yard. You remember forever the night they played the tight. Great movie quote. That's not practical. It's fiery, but it's, guys, this is exactly the moment we practice for on Wednesday. We know what to do. We know what they're going to do. Let's go make a play. And what happened? Christian Gray knew exactly what was coming and almost pick-sixed it.
And that was a zero cover blitz, by the way. Like, yes. Look, give Al Golden a lot of credit. He has a lot of faith in his secondary, rightfully so. But he's zero covered that sucker. Like, he brought everybody to make Connor Wigman have to get rid of that ball. And there was Christian Gray, who, just about pick-six that thing. And what a cherry on top that would have been. But whatever. Like, that was unbelievable. One thing I wanted to pose to you, I think I know the answer to this question, but I just want to get it out there. Marcus Freeman's in year 3 as the head coach. He's in year 4 in this program as the defensive coordinator / head coach. The vast majority, if not all, vast majority of the players that were playing last night, he either brought in as a defensive coordinator or as the head coach. And they are him. Like, they have adopted his personality. Like, this is his team, because a lot of the older guys are transfers that he brought in. Right now, there's some guys across the D line. Obviously Jack Kaiser's been there for a while.
Cross, Batelho, and Mills. But even them, Riley Mills and Jordan Batelho have spent more time with Marcus Freeman than they did Brian Kelly. 3-2.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Actually, 4-1.
4. Yeah,
if
because
you think about it as the coordinator.
That's why I brought that
Jack
up.
Kaiser has been with Marcus Freeman 4 out of his 6 years at Notre Dame. Every year that Jack Kaiser has been an actual player on the field for Notre Dame has been in some way, shape, form, or fashion with Marcus Freeman, either as his position coach / coordinator or his head football coach.
Right. And
so but here, that was the thing we talked about coming in. But if you lay an egg in A&M, this isn't Brian Kelly's fault anymore.
Then it's on him. Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
We talked about this, Vince.
Right.
This roster has very little Brian Kelly DNA. This isn't like 2012 when Brian Kelly had a lot of Charlie Weiss guys on it. And I actually am saying that to defend Brian Kelly, because Brian Kelly couldn't go to the portal the way that Marcus Freeman can to fill certain roster issues that Charlie Weiss left him. He had to now Charlie Weiss actually left him a pretty good flipping roster, but that's the point is you couldn't have the quicker fixes like Marcus Freeman can. And Marcus Freeman had that extra year as the coordinator, to your point, to recruit Benjamin. I mean, think about the full recruiting class that Marcus Freeman brought in. Like, his first full recruiting class as a head coach was the 23 class. and that class made a big impact Saturday night. But his first class as a defensive coordinator had Josh Burnham, had Junior Tuihalamaka, had Jalen Sneed, had Benjamin Morrison, had Jaden Mickey. Like, that group of guys were part of that class.
Right.
Now they're all playing big roles. So, dude, this is your DNA.
Right.
Brian Kelly didn't have that extra year where he was like the OC in 09. You know what I mean? Where he kind of recruit guys. So this is your team. This is your DNA for better or worse.
Correct.
And for Saturday night, it was absolutely for the better. To your point, that team played with swagger, played with confidence, played with physicality, and played with fire. Who does that sound like?
Sounds like the guy that was in the tunnel getting ready to run out on the field.
You know what I loved about that video? You and I have said this before. You guys see the Marcus Freeman at the press conference. You guys see the Marcus Freeman on the Peacock show. You see the Marcus Freeman in the suit, talking nice at the other sporting events, and he is that guy.
Yeah, he is.
But what you guys don't know is when he gets on the football field as a football coach, he's that old school middle linebacker that played at Ohio State, had over 100 tackles.
He's intense.
For an Ohio State team that played for national championship.
Right.
That's a fiery guy.
Yes.
And you saw a football, but it doesn't mean he's not smart, because again, middle linebacker, smart, knows the game, not a great athlete, good athlete, but not a great athlete. Means he had to have it up here too, Vince.
Right. And
you see his team finally kind of with his DNA, and part of that is the coaching staff, because you now have a coaching staff where everybody's going, and you don't have this guy's agenda going in this direction and this guy's agenda going in this direction. You have everybody going in the same direction.
Right. And it shows.
If Al Golden wasn't bought into Marcus Freeman's vision, he'd have left by now.
Correct.
If Al Washington wasn't, if you know what I mean, and that's not say Al Golden ever wasn't. The point is, Al Golden has plenty of opportunities to have taken any other job he wanted, especially after last year. He chose to stay at Notre Dame with Marcus Freeman. Why? Because he believes what they're building together.
And guess who else had other opportunities? Mike Denbrock,
Mike Mickens, Al Washington,
all of these guys. Mike Denbrock could have stayed at LSU and been the highest paid coordinator in the country. Could have. But he decided to come to Notre Dame. Yes, he loves Notre Dame. That's absolutely part of it. Don't get me wrong. But he also believes in Marcus Freeman. So, these guys are all pushing the sled in the same direction. That's the key. And it bleeds down onto the team. And the team, we saw it last night, and especially in the fourth quarter, this team is Marcus Freeman's team. They played how he coaches. Okay. And he also, in his whole journey to being a head coach and all of these different things, super fiery before the game, super emotional, super excited. As soon as that game started and he was on the sideline, he was all business. He wasn't overly emotional. He wasn't, you know what I mean? He was locked in to what they wanted to do. He made calls quickly. Those fourth down calls, it wasn't like he was asking everybody's opinion. He knew the game plan. He knew what he wanted to do, and he did it. The first time he got super emotional was the fourth down stop at the end of the game. I told you. You know what? I saw a different Marcus Freeman on Saturday night. And we talked about it in the post game, so I don't want to retread all of that.
Yeah, but it might not sound like, well, what's that have to do with a film breakdown? Because when you really dive into the film, those things become more obvious.
Thanks for bringing us back. Yes.
To where, okay, maybe they weren't in the right position there initially, but they knew how they could quickly react, and you could see the talent taking over. You can see the recruiting having its impact. I'm going to have an article coming out in the next couple of days where I'm going to talk about you're seeing the Marcus Freeman, Chad Bowden DNA on this roster, and you're seeing, okay, this is the vision for what Marcus Freeman has for Notre Dame football.
Right.
And you're seeing more and more of that when you look at those sophomore kids.
Right.
And that was a big part of it. Big part of it. And you see why Riley Leonard fits in so well at Notre Dame too.
Yeah, right.
Because kids, again, you see this goofy kind of happy-go-lucky, silly. If you watch the Peacock thing, that kid, that's a goofy kid. And I mean that in a great way. He's a great teammate to have. And I love hanging out with that guy.
He's goofy, laid back.
Don't take himself too seriously. But man, you get him on that football field, and that kid is a warrior on the football field.
Man.
And
look, it's not coach speak when, we heard in fall practice that he wanted to be hit. He wanted to, take the red jersey off. That was not coach speak. That was not some anecdote for writers to put into a story. That's him. He just wants to be out there with the guys getting hit and doing it all. And that's what you saw, especially in the fourth quarter, man. Putting on the cape and just being the guy. And it wasn't perfect at times. There's no doubt about it. And the first person that will tell you that is Riley Leonard. But when it mattered, he got the yards that mattered on the ground and through the air. He was a huge part of winning that game. So that's our overview of the entire game. We're gonna start breaking it down here in just a second. But in the meantime, make sure you hit that like button, that subscribe button, that notification bell. Share with your family and friends, and of course, jump on the boards.irishbreakdown.com. And I didn't bring this up before, so I will bring it up now. We're not going to put any video out here on YouTube because of the demonetization and all of that.
And we won't put the screenshots and things
right
in the past too.
That is now moving over to the boards.
Because we're going to have live film
Correct.
and talkovers and X's and O's and all that stuff.
So that's moving.
That'll come out tomorrow.
Right. So boards.
Everything got moved back a day.
Because of
because travel. So upon further review today, that stuff will all be tomorrow.
So normally we'll do upon further review on Sundays, and then all that stuff will hit the boards on Monday. So it's just one day removed today or this week. So boards.irishbreakdown.com. Again, best money you're ever going to spend, especially during the football season, because there's going to be a ton of video breakdowns over on the boards. So you want to get signed up. You want to do your thing if you're not already, because, we're still going to do upon further review because we watch the film and we want to talk about it. But if you want to see specifically what we're talking about and get even more in depth, you got to head over to the boards.irishbreakdown.com. All right, Brian, next segment that we want to talk about is we want to revisit the keys to success. And we'll go offense, then we'll go defense, and we'll talk about each key. And this is not a hugely long segment, but we want to talk about, okay, were these keys important to the game? We thought that they would be. Were they, did they hit these keys? Did they do what we thought that they should do? Right.
And did they have an impact? Right.
And did they have an impact? That's exactly right. So let's jump right in here offensively, Brian. The first one was start fast.
Yeah.
And that's always a good one. And it's always one that I feel like I would love to see happen in every single game. But did they start fast? I think there's an argument a little bit on both sides of this, but I want to hear your opinion. Did they start fast, and was it impactful in the game?
Yes and no.
Right.
So overall, no, they didn't start fast. They only scored 6 points through the first 2 quarters. That's not a fast start. However, I do think answering Texas A&M's first field goal drive was important. So I wouldn't necessarily. So if I was doing a grade, I'd say I'd probably go with a minus on the did they answer it. But I do think that first drive was important.
Yes.
It for 2 reasons. One is it tied the score,
right?
Obviously. Number 2 is it did give the defense time to kind of go over a couple things that were happening that A&M was doing that they could kind of then, get on the pad. Because, you've got those pads now, so you can actually watch live plays. It's not like it used to be back in the day in the NFL, right, where they'd get, the screenshots. And
it still is. NFL is still stills.
Really?
It's not video. Yeah, it's stills. Yeah.
Where college now, however, it's
like it is in high school.
Yeah, it's like we got the all 22 film. You know what I mean? And it's I'm watching the play happen, which I don't. I'm somewhat sympathetic to Chuck Martin's thoughts on that, but whatever. It is, the rule is what it is, and you make the most of it. So the more time you have on the sideline to kind of go over that stuff, especially in a game like this where you're not really sure what they're going to do, the better it can be. So it also took some time, and so then the defense was able to adjust, and then obviously the defense kind of settled in. After that first drive where they gave up, that first score, they kind of settled in, buckled in, and were able to make some stops, and and outside of some penalties would have really been able to shut them down. So, so in short, no, they didn't start fast, and that's why this was a much closer game. There was a lot of opportunities early, Vince, for them to kind of make some plays and do kind of create some distance in this game, first play of the game, they run a swing pass to Jeremiah Love, and Jaden Harrison has a really good block on that play. If Jordan Faison blocks his guy, Jay Love might be out the gate. I mean, we saw what these backs can do if they get in space. You know what I mean? And
Right.
I had there were two different times that drive where somebody ran a wrong route. Very clearly ran a wrong route. And there's miscommunication. You have a drop by Bo Collins on series 2, a missed block by Bo Collins on series 1, a blown pass protection. You had a bad RPO read by Riley Leonard. There just were some different things like that. Missed slide protection by Devin Ford. Just a lot of sloppy stuff like that where you look at it and you're like, man, boy, if they could make a couple of these plays, they might have a shot to do something. And there was a play where Riley Leonard throws an incomplete pass, and it was the second quarter, and it was the drive after the field goal drive where they tied it 6-6. And it's 1st and 10 at the 49-yard line. It was the play where he misses Chris Mitchell over the middle. Now, Chris Mitchell's a pretty fast kid. Maybe if you lead him there, maybe he outruns the safety. At worst case scenario, gets tackled for a 12 to 14-yard gain, and now you're into their territory. But on that particular play, I didn't think Riley made the correct read. He should have gone backside to a burst corner from Bo Collins, and Bo stuck the top of his route, and the corner fell on Bo's top end. And if he reads it correctly pre-snap, gets the ball out, it's 13-6 in the second quarter, and Notre Dame has now scored on back-to-back drives.
And that's massive because the way the defense was playing, right? I mean, yeah.
Right.
Yep.
So there was a lot of stuff like that where I can't say you started fast when you missed on all those opportunities, but I will say at least they get a little bonus points for the fact that they did answer that first score and they took some time to do it, which was important. But they were definitely much better, at the end than they were at the beginning. Much better in the second half than they were in the first half.
To your point about, mistakes and things like that, I mean, the second play of the drive offensively, number one, the first thing I wrote down was empty. It's like, oh, okay, I'm going to do some empty here. Am I watching Notre Dame? But so they go empty, but it was a bad snap, right? And that became a bit of a recurring theme throughout the game, which obviously, especially in the first half, which has to be cleaned up from Ashton Craig. Look, I'm one of the biggest Ashton Craig supporters, and when he's on, but the snapping has to get better, right? Because look, Riley Leonard had issues in the passing game at times, but it's not always easy when you have to take your eyes down to collect the snap and then get your eyes back up and start figuring out what you want to do with the football.
He definitely didn't snap well, but there's a couple times when you look at the wide copy events, if you look for this when you rewatch it again, Riley Leonard was off about 5-6 inches too far to the right.
Oh, okay.
And there was a couple times where it was like, okay, now that's maybe 2 snaps. That doesn't have anything to do with the ones he was throwing at his feet and stuff like that, right? But just little things like that were just.
But I did notice Riley Leonard correcting himself at one point because he was a little too far over and then corrected himself back.
Yes.
So I will say that I did see that.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah.
Which was, I mean, and that's all stuff that's going to get worked out when you've got your first time. Because this is one of the things we talk about is like how quickly is Riley Leonard going to be able to get on the same page with his teammates?
Right.
And in the pass game on Saturday, he didn't really do that till the fourth quarter.
Right.
And so that was obviously some part of it. But yeah, there were just a lot of things like that, Vince, and the snapping from Ashton Craig was part of it.
Right. Yeah.
No doubt.
Starting fast did not happen, but I was ecstatic that they at least answered the field goal with a field goal because that was huge. It didn't take the crowd out of it, but it certainly calmed them down because, I mean, if Notre Dame comes out and they go 3 and out after a scoring drive, good luck. You know what I mean? As far as like getting the crowd, like it just, the atmosphere and everything else, like that's just not a great way to start. They at least put together a 9-play, 47-yard drive and kicked a 46-yard field goal to answer a score. Like that's all I care about. Like answer a score with a score, and I know that's cliche, but it means a lot, especially when you're on the road. So that was a big
can I say something else too, Vince, real quick about this?
Yep.
It's a special teams comment. We knew Mitch Jeter from 40 in is money.
Right.
I think it was huge that his 2 field goals at the very beginning, the very end, were both 46-yarders that he was very true on.
Yep.
Very true on.
Well, and something that I knew, but I didn't ponder it a whole lot. Look, new kicker, new punter, 2 new snappers because they have a different snapper for their long snapper.
I don't know that I've ever seen Notre Dame.
Right.
It's been a long time.
Yes.
I think there was a time during Kelly's or Charlie's era where they actually had an offensive lineman, or maybe it was Davey, where an offensive lineman was their short snapper. But they had
really?
I feel like that happened at one point in time.
So you had 2 new snappers, 2 new kickers, and a new holder. Like the entire
and your new holder doesn't play anything else.
Right.
So it's not like he's the punter who's been in the game and fielded snaps and things like that.
Right. It was a completely new operation across the board. And it was, I mean, I'm not going to say flawless because I'd like to see the punts be a little bit different or a little bit better.
It was flawless from a procedural standpoint.
That's fair.
And then the results were at the very least good to great.
Yes.
There was
the punt average was like 43 yards.
Right.
So
and he had a couple that weren't great, but he didn't have remember the first half against Clemson in 2015. First punt of the game for Tyler Newsome. He shanks out of bounds against Clemson, a 25-yard field.
Right. That didn't happen.
Yeah, exactly.
That did not happen. So I was actually very impressed special teams wise that they had clean operation, because that's a lot of new pieces put together. After a long time of having like Milk be the snapper always, you know what I mean, and just being that steady piece. So hats off to the special teams unit. I know you guys want to.
And the reason we're bringing that up here is because you go down there and miss that field goal, any momentum you have,
gone.
And
right. Yes, momentum gone. So let's go to the second key for the offense, Brian. It was offensive line must hold up.
The offensive line did not play well in this game. If you're grading it without any context of youth, inexperience, opposition, any of that, just did they do their job?
All of it.
Not do their job. They all graded out pretty low. I'd say Billy Schrouth probably graded out the best. Ashton Craig was probably the most consistent. But Anthony Knapp had Emil Wagner was steady, but unspectacular. Didn't do anything special. Didn't do anything bad. Had a couple times got driven into the quarterback. Overall, it's okay. Anthony Knapp had some bad mistakes. Sam Pendleton just turned they got to get a lot better. But they held. That's why I said they don't need to They got to hold their own. And in this game, they held their own.
Yeah.
Look, there's a ton. No coach on this staff has more work to do to clean stuff up than Joe Rudolph, which is expected when you have such a young offensive line. Like, that's not a shot at Joe Rudolph. If it wasn't the case, then something either really bad went somewhere else or the offensive line played light years better. But without any context, did they execute well? Not really, consistently. Lot of stuffs, negatives in the run game. Riley Leonard got pressured a decent amount, blah, blah. All those things are important. You got to clean that up. You got to fix that. Yes, it worked against A&M, but you're not going to be able to win every game by only scoring 23 points. You know what I mean? You may not anyway. But they held up. And what you and I said or what Ryan and I talked and Trevor and I talked about going into the game was, with the backs you have, sometimes you just got to get a body on a body.
That was that last touchdown, by the way,
and
by Jeremiah Love.
All the touchdowns. That's exactly what they did. A body on a body, and they did that enough to win. I also said, look, if you get beat in the pass game, just stay engaged, and Riley can make people miss. That happened
and they did that
times.
Yeah.
And there was there was a couple run throughs that got to get cleaned up, but just when a guy got beat one-on-one. But the big thing for me, Vince, is one of the biggest beefs I had about last year's O-line. So there's way too many of these big road games where they just got their butts kicked physically. Just physically got their butts kicked.
Yes.
And there was no win some, lose some. Like, there were some snaps where Anthony Knapp just got tossed or Sam Pendleton got the block destruction. Shamar Turner's a monster in that game. Number 5, the D tackle.
Okay. Yeah. And he had his shirt tucked up underneath.
And you're like, yeah, D tackle shouldn't do that, but go for it, brother. You got it. You know what I mean? Like,
yes. Right.
He shook Billy Schrouth one time, but there's also a lot of snaps where Notre Dame's guys won those battles. I mean, Sam Pendleton had some really bad snaps, but go watch him on the 2 touchdown runs and Jadarian Price's long run, and you're like, that's why Sam is starting.
Yeah.
You live with them. And okay, so since I had some fun taking shots at BK last night, this is the perfect time to bring this up. This is why for years I have said, if it's close, go with the more talented player, even if he's younger. And remember, people say, oh, you can't do that on the O-line. This is why you do it. Because Pat Coogan would not have got beat. And this is not meant to be a shot at Pat Coogan. It's just a reality of his talent level. Pat Coogan would not have had as many mistakes as Sam Pendleton on
like
Saturday.
the mental mistakes, going to a different place.
But he doesn't dominate a 3 technique or a 1 technique down into the hole to open up that run lane for the multiple touchdowns. That's the difference.
Right.
You live with that so you can get that. You live with the mistakes so I can get that dominant block, because if I can just get a couple dominant blocks, Sam Pendleton had 3 great blocks in that game. And guess what happened on all 3 of those great blocks?
2 touchdowns and a long run. I mean, right?
Like, it's not a coincidence.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
And then you also trust your coaching to that, hey, we're going to take our lumps, but we're going to coach these guys up, and they're going to keep getting better and better and better every single week.
Yeah. But you live with those mistakes, and they did the same thing on defense. You live with the mistakes from the really talented younger players, because you know eventually – because here's the thing. More games does not make you more talented.
Right.
If you're a 4-5 on game 1, the odds are you're going to be less than a 4-5 on game 12, because you're going to be a little tired. But you're not going to be faster, stronger, more athletic. Your pro shuttle is not going to go from 4-7 as a guard to 4-2 as a guard because you've played 30 games now.
Right.
That doesn't change. What changes is now I know the proper technique to use. Now I've seen this front. I've seen that stunt. I have experienced how to handle this. My footwork is better. My technique is better. My grasp of the offense. All that's what gets better over time.
Right.
So you take the really talented player and put him in, and this is exactly what I've been talking about for years. This is why you do it. And they just went full, okay, we're just putting our dudes out there.
Yeah.
And see how it goes. And it went rough for a lot of the game. It did. But you saw why they did it. Because when it was right, it was right.
Yeah.
I mean, that counter run that they ran for a touchdown, you're like, dude, I don't know how you can block it up better than that, when A&M knows, dude, they were in 12 personnel. Everybody in the stadium knew what was coming. And when I saw it live, this is why I love going to all 22. When I saw it live, I thought Jeremiah broke several tackles getting through the line. He didn't, nobody touched him. He didn't break a tackle or make somebody miss till he got 10, 15 yards down the field and made a DB man. He had to leap through a hole. The hole wasn't huge, but nobody touched him.
Right.
Because they just blocked it as perfectly as you can block it. And Jeremiah was patient. He read it and he hit it.
Mm-hmm.
And so, did they play great? No, they didn't play great. They played pretty average from an execution standpoint, but that competitiveness, the toughness, the physicality, and when they got a body on a body, then the backs could take over and do some things.
Yeah, because there was 7 negative plays, I believe, Brian, behind the line of scrimmage, and that's not great.
That finished in the top 10 last year. Tackles for loss. By the way.
Look, that number needs to go down, and it will. And it will, but they had 0 sacks. Now, some of that is a tribute to Riley Leonard and what he's able to do. But
not every sack was on, and one of the pressures on Riley Leonard was on Riley Leonard because he didn't set the protection the right way.
Right. But didn't we tell you guys that? We told you guys that, this is a young offensive line and they've got a mobile guy back here. And so it's going to make things a little bit better from a sack production standpoint and all that. But at the end of the day, it was still 0 sacks. And I think Pro Football Focus has it as 4 pressures.
Right. I mean, it was a little more than that.
Fair.
I haven't. It was more than that. Let me say this last 2 thing, Vince, is what did we say about this? You and I say about these running backs, guys. They don't need that big of a hole.
Right.
Just give them a crease, and these kids are so explosive they'll hit it, and that's exactly what they did.
Yeah.
And I'll get into more some of the things the coaching did to make that happen here as we get into other segments.
So, third point, offensively, get Texas A&M on its heels.
I don't think they did a great job of that, to be honest with you. They did some things that I thought were good with that, but maybe I'm being a little too harsh there, Vince. There were some things they did that I liked, but they didn't do quite as much of the moving the pocket. Like, I don't know that Riley Leonard did a single sprint out or bootleg
I don't think
in the game.
Yeah.
Like, they didn't change the launch point. The motions were effective. Like, they used some motions, but not some of the stuff we've seen. There was no like orbit kind of stuff. There were some things they did, like sending the back this way and then, faking that because they ran a swing screen on the first play of the game. And later in the game, they faked that swing screen to the left and then threw a tunnel screen back to Bo Collins to the right, got a good gain out of it. So, I mean, they had some screen game stuff that was going, but there wasn't anything that I felt necessarily had A&M on its heels.
Gotcha.
In that game. What Mike Denbrock chose to do instead was to play the chess game. Instead of, whereas, okay, I want to see what you're doing, and then I'm going to have an answer for it.
Right.
And that's why I thought he did it. So, no, I don't think he did a lot to necessarily get A&M on his heels in this game.
Right.
But part of that also could be, well, what if a couple of these things early hit? And that's part. So it's not even just from a coaching standpoint. Some of the things he did do early from a play calling standpoint that maybe could have done that. Quarterback missed or somebody made a mistake and it didn't work out. So maybe my answer is different if they would have executed a little bit better. But no,
Sure.
I don't think they necessarily did a ton to have. Like, did A&M at any point in time feel like, gee, we can't pin our ears back and go at these guys? I don't think
because they kept coming and
right.
coming and coming. Yeah, so I agree with you on that front for sure. The last point offensively is create big plays. And Sean and I kind of talked about this in the last show. I'm curious to see what your thought process is. What is your definition of a big play, like from a stat standpoint?
Well, it's a pass play over 20 yards, and it's a run play over 10 to 15.
Okay.
Over 15.
Yeah,
or
he said 15.
Play can also be a moment.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
Like a 16-yard gain to Cooper Flanagan, to me, on first play of a or on first down of a drive. To me, that's a big play.
It sets a tone for the drive.
Yes. Second and 6, you need a play and you hit that play to get that. That's a big play to me. So it could either be a big statistical play or a big moment play.
Gotcha.
When I think of it, it's both of those. Now, statistically, it is what it is. Actually, for me, it's actually anything 25 yards or more in the pass game or 15 yards or more in the run game.
Okay. If we use the 20 yards or more in the pass game, and if you use 20 and 15, Notre Dame had 5, Texas A&M had 0.
Right.
I mean, statistically. And I was actually a little surprised to hear that number after watching the game, but as I look back, I was like, okay, yeah, you're absolutely right. But yeah.
So they had the Bo Collins play in the pass game. Was their only one in the pass game, right?
I believe so. Sean's the one that tallied everything up, so I don't have it in front.
Because you had a 21-yard run by. Well, yeah, because you had the 18. You had 3. Here's the funny thing: 3 of them came on the last drive of the game.
Correct.
Like real drive of the game.
Yes.
And then you had the one run by Jeremiah Love, so that's 4. What would the other one be? I'm trying to find the other one here. On the touchdown run. Duh.
Okay. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
2 touchdown runs. Yeah.
So my answer to did they do that, Vince, is in the pass game, no. They didn't do a very good job. And I think there was opportunities there.
Right.
And let me just do I want to get into this now? Let me grab my notes for the next segment. I'll wait till the next segment to get into my thoughts on what I thought of them not being more aggressive in the pass game. The reality is they didn't try to generate a lot more big plays in the pass game. They were trying to gash A&M with the run game. Mm-hmm. And I'll get into some specifics here again in the next segment, but run game wise, this is a plus. And ultimately, I said before the game, you're going to get 4 or 5 chances for big plays in this game. You got to hit them. I kind of thought it'd be 3 or 4 in the pass game, and then maybe a big run or 2. It was flipped, and they got the 4 or 5 big plays. And it was, and so was this a key to victory? Absolutely.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Your offense is struggling to do anything. You haven't really moved the ball all that well all game. And all of a sudden, just like that, with your offense sputtering a little bit, you rip off a 29-yard run, and it kind of sparks you a little bit, right? And then you come out in the second half, and it's possession 2 of the second half, and you're starting to get a little bit going, right? You get a 16-yard game in the pass play, which to me was a big play, not statistically, but moment-wise. Right. And what does that drive do? And you go hit it. And, again, I'll break down here in the next segment some of the things that I really liked about how they got there. But the point is those big plays started to have an effect in the second half. And you were able to do things schematically to generate those big plays. And then the execution was there. And that's really what broke A&M's back. And again, 3 of them came on that last go-ahead drive. But I think leaning on them all game and doing things all game is partly what opened up that opportunity for them. Because in the fourth quarter of this game, your offensive line was still going strong, and they were starting to wear out down a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
And that's partly what sparked them.
I use the word bullied in the like especially in that last drive, but the fourth quarter specifically, Notre Dame kind of bullied Texas A&M. I mean, they were the team that was more physical at the end. I mean, you look at that last touchdown drive and what Notre Dame was able to do, even from a play calling standpoint. I mean, quarterback runs and, 2 big pass plays and then 3 more runs. Like it was, hey, we're going to just kick your butt 85 yards down the field and hold on to the ball for 4.5 minutes and put together the longest drive of the game to put this one away. And there's nothing you can do about it. You know what I mean? And so all of those mistakes, they were absolute mistakes, and they're all things that need to be cleaned up. There's no doubt about it. But when it mattered, they did it. You know what I mean? And so those, and like you said, 3 out of the 5 big plays were in that drive. And so that's when it mattered. So I just love that drive. I've gone,
but
back
also
to it numerous
what
times.
really sparked Notre Dame in that game. It's a 47-yard touchdown run.
Oh yeah,
that's what truly because now A&M was kind of playing catch up all game.
Yes. Now they had to sit back and throw the ball, and Notre Dame could then defensively pin their ears back and come get it and just do some different things on the defensive side of the ball. And it was just, it was great.
Yeah.
Let's flip it over to the defense, Brian, and let's go over some of these keys to victory defensively. Here we go. First one, dominate the line of scrimmage.
I don't think they dominated. They get like so for me, it's you can either do a plus, a check, or a plus is like you got that one and you nailed it. Like a check is, okay, you did your job there.
Mm-hmm.
And then a minus is you didn't execute. They did not dominate up front. And honestly, that's what's even more impressive about this performance is the D-line didn't play poorly at all. They just didn't play great.
Right.
They did their job and they did it hard. And, there were some areas where, you missed Gabriel Rubio in this game.
Sure.
Because Donovan Heinisch is a good football player. And he's done a lot of good things for Notre Dame and will continue to do more good things for Notre Dame. But this wasn't really his game, right? This isn't a game where if you were healthy, you would have necessarily wanted Donovan Heinisch to do the things you were trying to do. Because what Notre Dame was trying to do in this game, and I didn't like it at first because I wanted them to be more aggressive against what I don't think I did not think is a very good Texas A&M offensive line. I thought A&M's offensive line was a lot better in this game than I thought they were going to be coming in.
Completely agree. They use their size to their advantage.
Right. But Notre Dame's game plan defensively, Vince, was very much we are not going to, looking at it from their standpoint, we are not going to do things that are too aggressive that can potentially open up some bad fits by our linebacker equal big gains. And so there was a lot of playing gap assignment football. There was some 2-gapping going on with the D-line, which they don't always do a ton of. And Jason Onye did that well. Howard Cross handled that well. Riley Mills handled that well. Donovan, not quite as much. And that's when you started to see them have a little bit of success. Some of the edge players handled that pretty well. Others didn't. And so overall, I didn't think the D-line played good football in this game. Good football. And they made some big plays and some clutch moments. I mean,
sure.
There was a play where A&M's trying to put a last drive together. And I think it was the drive after Notre Dame took the lead, or maybe it was a drive before where they punted and then took the lead. They tried to run an outside zone on Notre Dame, and it had been working for them relatively well to get some good chunk yards. And Jordan Patelho got held like a dog on that play, but he fought. He would not let them reach him. He fought so hard to make sure he stayed outside and just wrote that he was being held, Vince, but he carried the tackle to the sideline and forced the running back out of bounds despite being held. Like, that's the play we've been dreaming of to get from Jordan Patelho.
Yes.
Yeah, we know he can make the flashy pass rushes, but can he do the little things? And I thought Jordan did a great job of that. Marcus Freeman talked about that today. But it was stuff like that, Vince, where did they play great? No, but then Howard Cross has the big sack.
Yeah.
Jason Onye has a good power rush that gets the quarterback on his heels. Boubacar had a couple really good pressures to get in there. Burnham had a couple really flashy plays in the game. So they did enough to where you could say they won the battle. There's no doubt they won the battle. They just didn't dominate it the way that I hoped that they would dominate it or thought they could dominate. Part of that, in fairness, is I think A&M's going to have a much better offensive line this year than we thought.
Yeah, agreed.
Like, I thought they were pretty good in this game.
Yeah, I was impressed, actually.
And I thought also the game plan was geared a little bit towards protecting the linebackers a little bit in this game as well, Vince, where they're just not putting quite as much on the linebackers as they did last year. So,
and that's fair, though, in game one.
Yeah,
I'll
give them a check. They did their job. They didn't dominate.
Right.
But doing their job in this game, because I mean, Al Golden said it last week. We said it. If you just play your game, you're going to win.
Right.
You know, and A&M could do nothing offensively. They had like a 18-yard pass play in the first half to their tight end. They beat a corner fire. Okay, good for you. And then they had that 14-yard run late in the game. Inside of that, like, they did nothing. I mean, they had like no big plays. The 18 yards was their biggest play of the game, Vince. I mean, and you know, they didn't get a plus 10-yard rushing play until the fourth quarter. You know what I mean? Like, you look at their long plays of the game, they had 4 plays of more than 10 yards. That's it. You had a 10-yard 6 plays. You had a 10-yard completion, an 11-yard completion, a 12-yard run, a 14-yard run, a 15-yard completion, and an 18-yard completion. That is it. That is it.
Yep.
So
yeah, they only had 5 plays of double-digit.
It was as simple as this. There are some things they did coaching-wise, but it was Notre Dame's players made a lot of mistakes, but they weren't the big mistakes. Drake Bowen did some things he's going to have to improve upon. Wasn't quite as aggressive hitting a hole sometimes. Kind of took on blocks a little bit more than he should have. Kingston had a couple plays like that. Jaden Alsbury had a perimeter play like that. Jalen Snead took a wrong angle to the football, blew it up, but you had to play. But they weren't the big, no blown coverages, no, run fits that just open up gaping run holes, things like that. They avoided those big mistakes in the first game, Vince, which was surprisingly good. But I think part of that was by design. That he wasn't going to put those same linebackers in maybe some of the same stress situations that he will, I think, moving forward when they get a little bit more experience.
Agreed. Next defensive key to the game, and I'm very interested to see whether we're going minus, check, or plus here. Be disciplined. Don't get out leveraged or outnumbered.
It's not
based on some of the stuff we already talked about.
It's not a plus.
Yeah.
It's not a minus. It's a check.
Right. That's right.
They got out leveraged a few too many times, but it wasn't a consistent problem. It was a problem that crept up at times, but not. And I didn't actually. There was a couple times I noticed it live. I actually noticed it more on the rewatch.
Okay.
And here's why it didn't show up as much watching it live. Is because they're so freaking fast on the second and third levels of the defense.
Right.
I think you and I talked about this before, so I don't think I said this in the show, but there was a play, for example, where they ran an outside zone and Notre Dame got caught in a slant, a twist. And that's not the play you want to run when you're running a twist. So Riley Mills got caught up in the trash. Patojo crashes inside, and Jalen Snead is just standing there, Vince. Just standing there. And you're like, this is going to be a big play. And then Jalen starts running, and it turned into a 3-yard gain. Like, it just was like, you're completely out leveraged. You are running the exact wrong stunt again. Now, when I say wrong stunt, that's just how football is sometimes. You don't know they're about to run outside zone. Connor Stallions wasn't at the game last I checked, so you don't know what play's coming. So that's part of the chess match, right? 100%. And you're caught in the wrong stunt. Like, you're an offensive. If you run a twist at me running outside zone, I'm like, thank you, Lord Jesus. Thank you so much for having them call this play, because we're about to ghost this sucker. And there was no corner help because they ran it to a tight end side, I believe, with no receiver. And Jalen Snead just shoots out like a cannon and stops it after 3 yards. And there was another play where I'm like, they ran a play where I thought they were about to crease it. And then Rod Hurd comes out of nowhere and just blows it up. And I'm like, God, this team is so freaking fast at the football. Now, not just fast in speed, because I don't know that Rod Hurd's a burner. Jalen Snead's really fast. But it was also like a Don Schuler's not a 4.4 guy. He's got good speed. He's not a 4.4 guy. but they just knew where to go. They just like, this is my key. So you may think, oh, there's a hole there, but no, there's not a hole there because that's the safety's job. The safety's got to come down, and he's responsible for that play because you forced a bounce. It was an inside zone that they bounced. I'm thinking that cutback is there, but no, they got a safety flying downhill to take care of that, and Rod Hurd blows it up. There was a play where Xavier Watts was playing deep middle, and they ran a crossing route, Vince, and he was at the guy by the time he got to the line of scrimmage. And he's like this, and yes, Xavier's fast, but it just was, they were so on top of it,
right,
that you're just like, good Lord, this team
tell,
is just
you can tell
fast here,
yeah,
and then physically fast, and that allowed them to overcome some of that. But it wasn't an often thing. Now they were disciplined in an execution standpoint. Their lack of discipline, when I thought about giving the minus, was the penalties.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
So
sure do.
That was the thing, is where I kind of want to give them. So check for post-snap discipline, minus for pre-snap discipline because of the leverage things and, and some of the penalties that happened pre-snap, in my opinion. So wasn't as great as I hoped, but also not bad.
The next defensive key, when I first read it, I thought this is going to be a negative because of what you just talked about in the penalties and stuff, right? Because it's labeled no cheap yards.
Right.
And I was like, well, they gave up some cheap yards with some penalties.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't think that's the way that you were going with.
Well, no, I mean, it does to a degree.
Yeah.
It can do, like if it's 3rd and 2 and you jump off sides or you hold, that's a first down. That's cheap yards.
Yeah.
So it's part of it. I mean, that's always going to happen to a degree. You got to limit it.
Right.
And they definitely limited it, especially after the first couple drives. You had the pass interference on drive 2 and you had this offsides. But the other part of it is just don't give up big plays because you weren't disciplined. You give up a big play on a reverse because you didn't read it correctly. They ran a jet sweep, and it was a play that Jalen Sneed blew it up. But then Jalen took kind of a bad angle, and he holds the guy's. But that, even if Jalen doesn't completely whiffs on the guy, he forced the guy to bounce. Kingston was right there. Kingston read it perfectly. They tried to run action away to suck the linebackers in, and it didn't work at all. Linebackers read their keys perfectly. Because one of the things I said was, you've got to read your keys. Don't fall for all the action that they're going to do. And they didn't. So there's a play where everyone's running this way except one guy who's coming this way, and Xavier Watts is just screaming downhill at that one guy that was moving away from everybody else. It's because he didn't care what anybody else was doing. That's not my key. My key's that guy. And I think from that standpoint, Vince, that's why they limited a lot of the potential big plays, the cutback that opens up.
Yep.
The linebackers had mistakes, but they didn't have any of the bad mistakes that can open up. I mean, that's you talked about. You and I talked about this. Linebackers going to make some plays, but you just got to hopefully you avoid some of those big plays you give up. And they did that. They did that partly because they executed pretty decently. Second part of this, because they're just way better than the guys that A&M has on offense. I mean, let's be honest, that's part of it too.
Sure.
It's I'm just better than you. You know what I mean? I'm just better than you. And that's just kind of how it is.
Right. Last piece for defense. And they were really good at they were terrible at this 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. And last year they were really good at it, but you have continued the red zone dominance.
I mean, they weren't great in the red zone, but they late, obviously they gave up that touchdown. But the holding to that field goal early was huge.
Mm-hmm.
That was a big moment. You need that one, to me, mattered more than giving up the touchdown late, to be completely honest with you. But look, A&M scored on both of their red zone tries, but only one of them turned into a touchdown.
Right.
Because the problem that they had 2 years ago, Vince, is not only did they give up scores in the red zone, but they gave up touchdowns in the red zone.
Yeah.
That's what was so cool. It's you'll see teams sometimes, Vince, that have a very low red zone, ranking just overall, but then their red zone touchdown rate is not bad or a lot better. And so here's an example. In 2022, Notre Dame ranked 130th in red zone defense. Ohio State ranked 126th. When you go to red zone touchdown defense, Ohio State ranked 74th, which is still bad, but not nearly as bad. Notre Dame ranked 131st. So they're actually worse in red zone touchdown defense than they were in red zone defense overall. And they gave up 79% of the red zone scores the teams had were touchdowns.
Ugh.
Last year, Notre Dame finished third in red zone defense. They held teams to 41.2%. They basically went 50% in this game. Last year, 50% ranks you 19th in college football. So is it elite? No. Is it pretty good against a pretty good team? Yeah. I mean, I would have liked to see them make that stop and make them hold them that last one to a field goal.
Oh, absolutely. Especially the place in the game.
Did they do great here? No. But I'd rather flip it. I would have rather not have flipped it where you had a touchdown earlier and now you're hoping you got to hold them to a field goal and not another touchdown late, because now they're taking the lead on that last touchdown if they wouldn't stop them earlier. So not great, but I mean, Vince, let's be real about this. Notre Dame had a good game plan. This game really came down to Notre Dame's dudes are just way better than Texas A&M's dudes on that side of the ball. I mean, a lot of that. I mean, it doesn't mean the coaches didn't do a great job. They did, but there's a lot you can do as a coach when I just know my dudes are better than their dudes.
Makes things a lot easier as a coach.
Yep.
As a coach.
Yep.
That's going to do it for this segment of the show, where we kind of look back at the keys to victory or keys to success. Make sure you hit that like button, that subscribe button, that notification bell, share with your family and friends. Really appreciate that. And of course, jump on the boards.irishbreakdown.com. That's where you want to be, because there's going to be even more material on there tomorrow. So you're just going to have to wait and see. So we're going to break it down. It's going to be awesome. So boards.irishbreakdown.com.
Boston College is kicking the ever-living crap out of Florida State right now.
Shut up.
They just scored to go up 14-0.
I purposely didn't turn it on because I was like, but that's hilarious.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I am basically going to bet whatever Detroit Hunter bets from now on. I've never gambled before. I'm going to start now because he called them going 0-2 to start the season like a month and a half ago in a Wednesday thing. Yeah,
they may implode.
Yeah,
after if they go 0-2.
So anyway,
out there.
Vince, you can cut this part out. We get so, right. But I had to bring that up because I'm like, holy moly, whew,
it's not good, not good. The next segment that we are going to hit is it's not a new segment, but it did just kind of the way we're doing it. But we're going to jump into the offense and we're going to talk about what we liked, what we didn't like, and then if there were any turning points in the game and like the biggest moments. And so we're going to do that for offense, and then we'll come back and do another segment for defense. So let's just kick it off, Brian, because we're kind of rolling here at this point. Offensively, what did you like from Mike Denbrock's third iteration as the offensive coordinator in the opener?
Well, the first thing I liked about the offense was their compete level. And that was huge for me, Vince.
100%.
And even positions that I don't think played well. Like, I didn't think the receivers played well. I didn't think they played bad, but they didn't play great. But they competed. And so what do I mean by competing? Okay, Bo Collins outplaying that guy for that football on that last drive. It was huge.
Yeah.
Right. And I like that they went back to that because they actually had I'm pulling up my play-by-play here, Vince. But they actually went to that play on the drive before. I think it was the drive before. Where's my play sheet? I just had it here. Looks like I moved my play sheet. Did I close it? I don't think I closed it. I have too many tabs open, first of all. That's a big part of my problem. I have way too many freaking tabs open.
Oh, that's great.
But that's a bit of a problem for me. But let me find the play sheet here real quick. But I believe it was the play before where they had, there it is, where they had run that play and Riley just missed them. Yes, it was the drive before. It was a 1st and 10 at their own 35, and they ran goes on the outside or goes on the outside, and then an in cut out of Max Pro. And so you had that matchup. And so they saw that Bo had the one-on-one backside. They threw it and Riley just missed it. So they went back to it. They ran a different concept. This time they went 3-by-1 and they ran their slot fade concept, but they still had Bo backside because A&M was starting to adjust their coverage a little bit, where in the first half they were playing just too high and Notre Dame wasn't attacking them deep at all. Here they started to kind of rotate a little bit more down versus 3-by-1. So Notre Dame went 3-by-1 on that particular play and threw the backside. Now, Notre Dame was getting to 3-by-1 a lot, Vince, with motion, but A&M would handle that differently than if they just lined up in 3-by-1. 3-by-1 means 3 receivers to one side and 1 to another for those that don't. I don't mean that disrespectful. I mean, some people may not know what I'm talking about. But so when they would line up in 3-by-1, they'd get a little bit of a different coverage structure, and they were starting to see that because A&M was starting to say, okay, they're just not going to throw the football down the field. And so when they saw that, they then took that first shot to Bo on the backside of just double out cuts or double go cuts, and they had run that play on the play before. They had run that same concept, but they stopped, and he had a little comeback. So basically, when you run a vertical concept, it's if they open up and they go vertical and they kind of try to play over top of you, you just stop it, you just break it off.
Yep.
They ran that and they hit Bo for a stop, and then they went back to it, and then Riley tried to throw a back shoulder and he just missed. They went back to it on the next series in a 3-by-1, and it worked obviously perfectly. He competed like crazy for that football. Jaden Thomas, just that little thing of stepping to the ball.
Yes.
You guys have heard me say this a million times. Don't wait on the football. Step to the football.
Because he didn't do that when he was younger.
Right. We think about the Marshall game in 2022.
Yeah.
But he did that on Saturday, and it kept it from getting there.
Yes.
Go look at Jaden Thomas's block on Jadarian Price's touchdown run. It was great. So you look at Jaden Thomas. All right, 1 catch for 14 yards. I didn't make much of an impact. Oh, yes, he did. Because he basically had a pass breakup in the game. Right? I mean, so number one, which prevented an interception.
Which prevented a pick six, because if he catches that, it's 6.
Right. He has a huge block on the long touchdown run. And we saw that. Like, Jaden Harrison didn't make much of an impact. They had 2 really good blocks in the game. And they were far from perfect. Bo Collins missed on an early crack attempt. But then I believe it was Bo. I'm actually going to go find that play, Vince, but I believe it was Bo who had the block on the run by Jeremiah Love, had the crack block on the long run by Jeremiah Love. I'm actually going to pull that play up here real quick. But that was something, and I'll talk more about that play here in a little bit, but I believe you can't run that play, Vince, if it was Bo Collins, has a really good crack block. You know, he was patient where he needed to be and sealed that guy inside. But he did it aggressively, which then sucked the corner inside and got him outside of it. But the point being that, Vince, when you have receivers that just compete, you're going to be able to just make some plays. Not as much as you'd like, but they were make some plays. And when the quarterback didn't play, Bo had a drop in the game. I mean, so they were far from perfect, but they competed.
Yeah.
The offensive line competed their butts off. The running backs competed their butts off. And the quarterback absolutely competed their butts off.
Oh, yeah.
His butt off, I should say.
Yeah, no doubt.
So,
no doubt.
They just played hard. And that allowed them at the end of the day to do what they needed to do to win. Just battle your butt off, man. That's all. I mean, if you're better than them, if you just play hard, more often than not, you're going to win. If you have better players than the other team. And the reality is A&M fans don't want to recognize this, and people who obsess over recruiting rankings won't accept this. But the reality is Notre Dame has more talent than Texas A&M across the board. There's some spots where A&M's better, but it's like 1, right? And they may be older in some spots, but not better. And when you compete, that's going to win the day, Vince.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I really liked, watching it live and then also on the look back, was just the variation that Mike Denbrock kept bringing to the offense, whether it was formations, there was a ton of motions and all kinds of different stuff. And we knew that this was coming, but it was still refreshing to see on a game day. Okay. I mean, you and I have sat in the press box and watched Notre Dame games. We're like, okay, I know what they're running right here based on the way they line up. You know, I mean, that's just a fact. And I'm not denigrating. It's just a fact. This time around in this game, there was a lot of variation, moving guys around, putting 3-by-1, empties, motions, motion comebacks, all of these different things, just giving the defense more to look at, more to process. And then also now that's on tape. And so now other teams are going to have that, and they're going to have more to look at and more to process and more to practice. And, did they use the entire playbook in game 1? Of course not. Right. It was a very slimmed down version of, I think, what we're going to see even for, a few weeks from now and then moving forward.
Pass game wise, for sure.
Yes. Yeah. But you saw the skeleton of what they want to do offensively. And I just love the variation of it. And there's going to be more. It's going to be more complex. It's going to get, again, Mike Denbrock said, don't judge us on game one. And he said this before the game. Don't judge us on game one. Judge us on the improvement as we go throughout the season and what the offense looks like from week to week to week. But I love the foundation that was set in game one and everything that they put on tape.
Agree. Another one for me, Vince, I thought, speaking of putting on tape, run game adjustments were really good. The reality is Notre Dame felt they had a better shot of generating big plays in the run game in this game than they did the pass game.
Mm-hmm.
And
clear. Yeah.
And the reality is you and I talked about this before the season. Notre Dame's pass game is going to still be you got to prove it until they do it. And that's exactly what A&M said. You're not going to run on us. You're not going to have your tight ends beat us. And when they realized Mitch Evans wasn't in there, that they got even more aggressive coming downhill. But we saw Denbrock make several adjustments where you could just tell he's like, I got to find a way to get my running backs to the second level. Because as you and I have said a million times, when these running backs get to the second level, that's where some things can happen. And so what A&M was doing is they were very stout up the middle, but they were bringing their safety down away from some of their runs, like especially the inside zone runs, is they would bring their safety down on the downhill runs. And then, of course, when they would run outside zone, they would bring their safety down towards the outside zone. And Notre Dame didn't have anybody account for it. And so they made some adjustments. And when you look at some of the adjustments they made, Vince, I thought that it was a huge part of the game. First example was you had the back-to-back runs with Jeremiah Love, or Jadarian Price had his long run. But then on the very next play, you saw it a little bit too, where Notre Dame did some things to try to free things up. So if you go look at the first long run by Jadarian Price that got called back, they ran that a little bit differently because earlier in the game, they were running inside zone with a read. So they would basically, or they'd have the tight end in the box to create that extra backside surface area. And A&M was crashing it. Mm-hmm. They put that extra guy in the box. So the play that kind of sparked the offense initially was an inside zone lock play. It's what you call inside zone lock. And you build it off of like a kind of an RPO read. But an inside zone lock is you'll have guys running routes, and you usually do this without a tight end. But it means you're going to block inside zone front side, but backside you block out. So you kind of base block backside. So instead of blocking, everyone's going the same way in zone, which then creates the cutback where you've got to now read the defensive end. Inside zone lock, basically from the guard over, depending on the look, you're going to base block. Well, in this particular instance, the way that they ran it, Vince, was out of a 2x2 formation where the tight end was out wide. And so he was in the slot. They were middle of the field. This tight end was out lined up where the SEC logo. They had two receivers outside. And you look at it, they had 5 guys in the box and then 2 safeties. And their safeties were coming from depth because they were now focused on outside. And so they run that inside zone, and it's 5-on-5. Ashton Craig gets up to the backer. I didn't think that hold should have been called. You did think the hold should have been called. The point is, if he whatever the case, they had a body on a body. Right. And now because that safety's coming from distance, it's now him versus Jeremiah Love in the hole.
And I will take that matchup all day. And
that matchup worked incredibly well. Jeremiah ran right past Jeremiah beat 2 safeties on that play. The first one, when you have fast backs and you're trying to come from 15 yards, you better be real sound. And he wasn't. He wasn't, and Jeremiah just beat him.
Yeah.
And then the other safety tries to come down, and Jeremiah ran him over and then bounced outside. But that's what you do with backs like that. Like, dude, get them in space and let them do their thing. Sometimes you may tackle me, sometimes you won't. That was step one. So that was an adjustment. Okay, they're crashing hard and getting numbers. When we go tight end and attached, they're going to try to outnumber us in the box. When we spread out, that's a higher pass game tendency. We're going to now run out of that. They did that again later. They did the same exact thing later on the touchdown run, Vince, where it was 2nd and 14. It's a huge tendency breaker. You want to talk about tendencies. This is a huge tendency breaker. So Notre Dame comes out, Vince, and it's 2nd and 14. They go trips left, 3, and so your tight end is now out of the box. He is not attached. It is a passing situation. So I'm looking at A&M's defense. They have 4 guys in the line, a linebacker in the box. The other linebacker's outside of the DN, a little bit tighter. Their one safety is 14 yards off the ball, and the other safety is 16 yards off the ball. Pass situation. We're not going to let you throw the ball downfield.
Right. They were petrified of that. Yes.
No, what does Notre Dame do? Fine, we won't. We'll run inside zone lock. And just this giant hole opens up because it's 5-on-4. The linebacker kind of steps vertical. He gets blocked by the center. And then now the second linebacker has to come from depth. Again, it's now a space play. What do I always say? You want to get the running back when he first makes his cut or he hasn't made his cut because now he's not as dangerous. Once he gets downhill and it's in space, he's dangerous. Linebacker tries to tackle him in space and Jeremiah makes him miss and then just outruns the entire defense of the sideline.
Yeah.
Right? So that is great play calling. It's 2nd and 14. They're thinking pass. What do? Line up in a passing formation.
And run it.
And then run lock zone.
Yeah.
And then boom, big play. And then the other thing they did to that, because you can only do that so many times. They hit it twice. But then they ran the outside zone after the one play by Jeremiah Love gets called back. They go run outside zone on the next play. And they did that out of a 3-by-1 alignment as well, Vince. And you don't see this very often. They ran outside zone away from 3-by-1, away from trips. And because the way that Mike Denbrock teaches his outside zone, it's more of an off. It's actually his outside zone is a little bit more like kind of mid zone than it is pure old school stretch. It's sort of an off tackle. It's outside zone, but it's more of an off tackle play, which actually can hit vertically. So you can be a little bit more effective. But they basically ran outside zone to the weak side of 3-by-1. And so there's a safety and a cornerback side. That's it. And they were playing real aggressive with their corners. So what does Mike Denbrock do? He calls outside zone, play they had not run yet, comes out wide, safety comes flying down, Bo Collins cracks him. It's not a punishing block because you can't do that anymore.
He's got to kind of get in the way.
Bo gets in his way, and that corner does exactly what Notre Dame knew he was going to do.
To follow him in.
Squeezes down on Bo.
Yep.
And so then Jeremiah reads it perfectly. Anthony Knapp seals the guy outside. Jeremiah cuts up inside, outruns him to the sideline. And it's a big play. Final one. The touchdown run. Notre Dame ran counter on that play. They had run counter in that game a total of 3 times. Once on I think it was the first drive of the game, they ran counter and Jerem out of doubles. So wide, everybody wide. They motioned the tight end in, and he was the extra counter guy. So he came from backside. So they ran counter to an open side. As I've said in the past, open means no tight end. It's open at past the tackle. And A&M blew it up. They ran it later in the game with a quarterback counter, and it worked out pretty well because it was this different look. They ran quarterback counter they ran Trey left, so that's tight end, Trey left wing, so tight end in a wing, and then corner, and then they just kind of ran counter. So they got rid of the motion, goes for a 7-yard gain with Riley Leonard, quarterback counter. Then they came back on that last drive, Vince, and they ran 12 personnel. So this time they ran counter, same exact play that got blown up earlier, but this time they had 2 tight ends in the game, which created an extra surface area. And that little bit of difference, a little bit of width that they gained from that alignment is what opened up that little hole. Plus you had a great block by Sam Pendleton. So you like the counter concept, obviously, but you didn't like it earlier because they were crashing the ends really hard. And they did a great job of when they saw a puller, they would crash that puller hard. And if they didn't see a puller, they ran right at Riley Leonard. I mean, they were not going to let Riley Leonard beat them in the run game, which, again, makes it more impressive how successful he was.
The fact that he did,
but that extra surface area out of 12 personnel is what created that crease for Jeremiah to hit. And so when you look at those schemes that he ran, those adjustments he made to how A&M was playing them when they had a tight end attached, A&M would try to outnumber them. When they would spread out, in more passing formations, A&M was more willing to go man to man in the box. Denbrock saw it, adjusted, made the calls, and got his running backs big. You want to bring your safety down? Cool. We're going to run outside zone. We're going to crack that guy, and good luck trying to catch Jeremiah Love outside. You think we're in the passing down on 2nd 14? Hey, I got as much chance of hitting a home run with my running backs as I do my receivers, and that's not a knock on my receivers. That's because we got dudes at running back, which we try to tell everybody in the country all summer. Now everybody knows, right? And so it just I was much more impressed with his play calling in the run game after breaking it down, because you could see the chess match he was using in the run game. And I mean, it was very well done. And it wasn't just like you first think, well, yeah, your backs eventually are going to break one. Sure. But you schemed it for them to break one.
Yeah.
You saw what they were doing. You countered, and that got your guys in the second level, because, I mean, literally every time the running backs got to us in this into the just past the line of scrimmage, they went for a big play. Literally every time they went for a big play, because they also had an inside zone run earlier where Jeremiah got through the first level. It was like 2 plays before the touchdown run. They ran inside zone, and he got through that first level and then just made a dude miss and bounced it out the back, and then it's 18-yard run. I mean, literally every time that they got to the second level, they made a big play. That's pretty good.
I was gonna say, I like those odds.
I mean? But I loved that those adjustments he made in the run game. I really did. And then using how they were overplaying the spread stuff to their advantage in the run game. That's called not being stubborn, right? This is what we thought we were going to do. We're not going to be stubborn and keep thinking we're going to keep, well, what's our game plan? It's adjust on the fly. This is what they're doing. This is how we're going to counter that. And it created big plays. I loved it. Loved that from Denbrock.
Anything else you liked that you want to hit on before we move to the next category?
They answered and they finished, right? It's not how you start the game, Vince. It's how you finish it. They did start not great, but they answered that first drive, right? They answered. A&M gets a field goal to take the lead. You tie it up. And then, of course, when the game was on the line, Vince, it comes down to this, man. It's simple. Who's going to step up and make plays? Notre Dame, in all 3 phases of the game, stepped up and made those plays, right? Touchdown on defense. Defense makes the first stop. Offense scores. Defense makes another stop. Offense gets the ball, moves a little bit. Special teams has got to put it away. They put it away. But the offense, the way that the offense, and you mentioned earlier, Vince, the way that they played in the fourth quarter, that's the character and the heart of a championship caliber team. Now, do they have championship talent? Do they execute that way? All those things are still huge question marks. But that part, Vince, that you were talking about earlier, that part is there. That character of a football team, the culture of a football team. Will the execution come? Will they be able to throw the ball well enough to compete for championship? Questions that will have to be answered at some point in time in the future. But what we do know, if they can do every game what they did this game, this is going to be a tough team to beat, because if it's close in the fourth quarter, we're bigger than you, or we're better than you, we're faster than you, we want it more than you, we're better conditioned than you, even on your own field. Yeah. Even on your own field. Yeah. Sorry, this is just
right. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. All right, let's pivot to what you didn't like after reviewing the film offensively. And I know, we've discussed some of the fundamentals, not fundamental, but some of the mistakes that were made and some things like that. But, what did you not like in your review of the offense?
With 2 things we already talked about, so I'm literally just going to say them again, and then we already kind of hinted on them. But way too many miscues early. Yes. Dropped passes, not blocking well. The offense early on, O-line, was doing a poor job on down angles. They were going too shallow, which was allowing A&M to get over top of them. Later in the game, they were doing a much better job of staying high, so clearly they made an in-game adjustment. Hey, we got to make sure we get over top of that guy on a down block or an outside zone block. I mean, but still, there was a lot of missed opportunities early, dropped balls, missed reads, missed throws. Way too many miscues, right? So you were able to get it done this game, but you can't live on that in a 14 playoff, right? You're going to have to get better in that regard, So it's good enough to maybe beat Louisville and Florida State and maybe Georgia Tech, maybe USC. But when you get to the postseason and past the first round, and depending on if you get like I saw a projection they had Ole Miss as Notre Dame's first round. Hey, look, you're going to need to be prepared to score more than 23 against Ole Miss.
Right. Oh, because you're going to have to go probably score for score to a degree.
Right.
I mean, look, I love Notre Dame's defense, and we'll get to that. But yeah,
to some degree.
Score some points.
Right.
But after watching USC's defense again, I'm not super impressed, but we can cover that another time.
Right.
So anything else, sir?
No. Well, yes. The last one for me is I understand why they did not attack down the field.
Yes, we talked about that before the
Yeah.
show. Yes, right. I
I
didn't like it
understand
at first,
Right.
but I understand it now that I look back on it. And also, as I remind myself again, what they needed to do to win this game.
Right. So I get it to a degree. What I viewed it as, we got a great defense. We don't think they can score on us. I'm just looking at it from the Notre Dame coaching standpoint.
Yes, right.
We don't think they can score on us. We know they have an elite defensive line, which they do, and they confirmed that in this game. We know they got pretty good front seven. They got a couple safeties that are pretty good coming downhill. And they are a team that has the kind of pass rushing that they could maybe make a play. I mean, you think about the play where Riley Leonard almost gets sacked at his own 2. Now, yeah, if he can get the ball out to Devin Ford, maybe it's a big play, but you don't want to have to rely on that. And most quarterbacks aren't even getting out of that sack.
Exactly, because they're already getting sacked.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. There's so many people that were upset about the fact that he didn't get the ball to Devin Ford. It's like, do you understand what he did to even get that ball off?
Yep.
Yeah.
Right. And so those are things that you look at and say, you've got to do a better job there. You've got to do a better job making some of those plays. But even within that, I still want to see a little bit more aggressiveness. Try to generate some shots there. When you see that they're playing everything tight, try to find something. And looking back at the film, I actually think a couple times they did. Like I said, there was a play that they missed on an in cut to Chris Mitchell. You got to hit that play. That's a 10-plus yard gain. Maybe that loosens up. But on that same play, they ran a burst corner backside. It was basically, that invert smash that people will do, Vince, where the outside guy runs the burst corner in, up, and out, and then number 2 runs an out cut. They ran that. That was the play they ran to get Jaden Greathouse's first down, I believe. And on that particular play, let me go look at it real quick and see. Yes, they ran a burst corner outside Jaden, which also serves the ability to kind of isolate Jaden if it's going to be man or if it's going to be an off coverage. It's also a way to kind of do that. But they ran it earlier, and I thought Riley should have read it to go backside. And I'll send you the play after we're done, Vince. You'll look at it, and you're like, oh, my gosh. But if he looks where I think he should have looked, I think if he throws a good throw, it's a touchdown. And I'm actually going to show it to you now, Vince. It's actually play number 29, I believe. And so you can watch it. Well, actually, you don't have the numbers, but it's in the second quarter. It was on the play. It was right after Jeremiah Love's long run in the second quarter. So if you find that, if he reads that correctly, Bo goes up, in and up, and at the top of Bo's route, Vince, he sticks his inside foot in the ground, and the corner kind of leans towards him and falls down. And Bo is wide open, but Riley didn't read it correctly. I don't think he did. Looks the wrong way, and then throws a bad pass. So you had 2 guys open on that play. When you don't hit that, you got to kind of say, maybe Riley just doesn't have it today. You know what I mean? And then say, hey, but let's figure out some other ways to win. So I didn't like it. I would have liked to seen a couple more shots, a couple double moves maybe, once you saw them adjusting a certain way. But the way they were playing too high early, it would have been a little bit tight. And, those are things that we're going to need to see from them, Vince, in order to, moving forward, in order to win some of these games. That's just the reality of it. And so, we'll see if they can get it done. But I just would have liked to have seen a little bit more. I'll say this. I was not as fired up, and I'm curious about you. See it?
Just saw it,
right?
Yes, I did.
Now, go look at pre-snap. Based on the numbers and leverage, don't you think the backside is where he should have read that play? The burst corner and the out?
Yeah.
Right? That's what I think.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah.
And so those are things that I look at, Vince, and I'm like, man, those are those missed opportunities that you're talking about.
He had his head to the left at first.
But he went away from it so quick.
He came off of it so fast that he didn't have a chance to see the corner fall down. Essentially,
right.
I mean, Yes. Oh my goodness, that would have been a walk-in touchdown because there's no safety help whatsoever.
Yep.
But yeah, wow.
So anyway, Vince, those are things that that I look at and say I would have still liked to have seen maybe a couple more of those things. Go back to that play when you saw it open. Maybe go back to it again. But at the end of the day, I kind of thought that, man, this is an opportunity for them to kind of look at this and say, the opportunities are there. You're just going to have to find ways to hit them a little bit better next time. That's going to be the key.
And I think that, when a couple of those things didn't hit, now you've got them on film though too, and you can go back and you can look and you can teach and you can be like, hey, look at this. I mean, if you'd have gone here, you didn't come off this side as fast as you did, this is what we had. And I think there's a lot of teaching moments here that are now on film that you can see. But I also understand, the way the game flow was going, and it was probably tighter longer than they had anticipated. They didn't want to put the ball in a position where they would turn it over.
That's with the way that the offensive line was struggling with, and Freeman talked like they were doing some pressure things that really messed up Notre Dame's protection count. Yeah, the running backs weren't picking it up. There was a play where they had a run through like where I felt like the running back went the wrong way. They were just doing some things that Notre Dame didn't have a read on. So it's kind of like, hey, do we really want to expose our quarterback who's rushing his reads? Say he's mentally going too fast, or do we say let's lean into what he does well? Yes, let's lean into the run game. Let's try to find some of those opportunities, and then go at them.
And what Riley and the thing is, what Riley Leonard does well. I mean, look, I think he will eventually throw the ball well, and I think all of that. But what we know that he does well is run the football, and the margin for error, the margin for turning the ball over is much lower when he's running the football, right? I mean, it's much less risk and more reward at that point. And so I think they really leaned into that the last few series because, hey, okay, look, we know he's going to do this. We know he's confident in doing this. Okay, let's get after it and let's do this. We've got all this stuff on film that we can show them so that they can eventually get to that point. So I think the flow of the game had a lot to do with it too. And also the manner in which the team was played into the decision to kind of bring it back a little bit from a aggressive throw the ball down the field and things like that. So I didn't like it per se, but I also understand it from a coaching standpoint and from a let's get the win and get the heck out of here standpoint too.
I don't even know if it was a win and get the heck out of here. It's more of a we're better than them. Let's not do anything to let them make a play.
Right.
You know what I mean? And the way that
don't give them unnecessary momentum.
Yeah. After that first, they had a couple field goal drives, but outside of that, like A&M was doing nothing on this defense. Like they weren't going to go rip off a big play. They weren't about to go, kind of take this thing. I mean, don't do anything to give them because you almost had a couple of those. It's like, look, we're not going to allow that to happen. And so that's kind of where I'm at. I didn't love it, but I understood it.
Yeah, totally agree with that for sure. Okay, turning points offensively, big moments. What do you have here for the turning points, the big moments? I've got a couple in my head. I want to hear what you have to say as well.
A couple small ones. Riley Leonard's scramble on the first drive of the game. That converted a third down, and that was and then you got the targeting penalty. That was a big moment because number one, you knocked Dalton Brooks out, which helped a little bit. Sure. Not to the degree that some A&M fans think, but that's what kind of got you into field goal range. And it got you in a position where you could kind of make that early answer. But I honestly felt, Vince, that the game started to change really in the like late third quarter, when obviously the touchdown run, but that whole drive to me was the difference in the game. You weren't
to put them up 13-6.
You weren't being aggressive, but you came out that drive and you're like, hey, let's hit our snag concept. We think we've got something here. They ran that to the tight end and boom, there you go. You get a big play. And then you come back on the very next play, you get a little 5-yard completion on an inside zone, right, to Bo Collins, or you run a read zone, or you run a little under route, which gets minus yards. And so then you're backed up. It's 1st and 25. That little screen to Bo Collins where he goes in and makes an 11-yard gain was a huge play. Like a lot of people may point to the touchdown run, but here's why I think the play to Bo Collins was actually the big play of that drive. You're in 1st and 25. If Bo gets tackled for a 5-6 yard gain, it's now 2nd and 20. I don't know if that same run works as well because A&M's probably deeper at safety. And so the angle is not as tight. But by doing it the way that Notre Dame did it, and by getting that 11-yard gain and having the success that they had, and you were able to kind of go out there and make some of the, make that big play that on the very next play. I think that play set up the long touchdown run. Difference between 1st and 25 and 2nd and 14 is that it acted almost as a draw, but I like the fact they didn't actually run a draw because I don't like that in that situation. I don't think you get enough movement up front. I think the running back has to then make a cut so far back that it ends up not working as
right.
effective.
Right.
So that's kind of where I'm at.
I really obviously you can look at those couple of runs, the one that got called back and then the long run, towards the end of the second quarter. I think at that point I started to feel like, okay, they're starting to figure this thing out offensively. Mm-hmm. I'm really excited to see what they do when they come out of halftime. You know what I mean? Like they didn't score on that drive. Like I get it, but you started to see a glimmer of light that, okay, maybe they're starting to figure something out here, especially in the run game. You know what I mean? So that was a big one to me. And then I agree with everything that you said, but I loved the first drive out of half. The first drive of the second half where they went for it twice on 4th down.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah.
They started it with the pass to Flanagan and, the quarterback run on 4th and 1, they get 7 yards. That was a huge play. Then they go for it again on 4th down. Like, again, no points. Like, I get it, but messages were being sent at that point by Marcus Freeman to his team, right? It was being sent to the defense that I trust you. That's why I'm going for it on 4th down. But it was also sent to the offense that I know you guys are going to pick this up. You know?
That's interesting you say that, Vince. Can I point something out? Because that drive was actually not very successful. That's why you're like, that drive, like, what are you talking about? They had a 9-yard gain, a 0, a 0, an 8, a 0, a -1, a 9, and a 1.
Right.
You're like, but I love so I didn't think about that's a great point though, Vince, because it wasn't necessarily an effective drive execution-wise,
right?
But it was an incredibly effective drive from a mentality standpoint. Because you know what they did on the very next drive? It was the drive that I talked about.
Or the touchdown. Yes.
The very next drive was that drive.
Yes.
And so it was
I think it gave I'm not saying that the offense didn't have confidence in themselves or didn't think the coach had confidence, but like he proved it. Like he in a big moment, he's like, we're going for it on 4th down. And then we're going for it on 4th down again. And even though we didn't technically pick it up the second one, like, I've got confidence in you guys. This is how we're going to play. I dig that. I really, that drive said a lot to me. I felt really good after that drive. I really did, even though you're right. From an execution standpoint, from a yard standpoint, it wasn't great. But I have 2 stars in that drive as I was like writing it down as they were doing stuff. Like 2 big stars.
They got that first down, by the way. That was a horrible.
Oh my gosh. By like a full body, but whatever. Like, yes. Yeah. They absolutely.
Since that game might be over if they'd have gone down and scored on that drive.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Point, yeah. Yep. That would have been interesting. Because, like you said, it was the first drive of the third quarter. They come right out of halftime and just go down and boom, it's a touchdown.
Yes. Yep. And I thought that might have happened after I thought that they got it on the second 4th down. I was like, oh, momentum is on Notre Dame's side. Like, they're going down and they're going to put this one in the end zone. Like, I really did feel that way until obviously the call wasn't reversed and all that other nonsense. But then, the defense comes out, they give up a 1st down only because of a missed tackle. Right. And then, so 1st down run plus 0, 2nd down, short pass, missed tackle. They pick up the 1st down, but then it's 1st down, 1, 2nd down, incomplete pressure brought by the linebackers. Third down, run for a yard. And then fourth down, he just chucks it because he thinks Notre Dame's offsides. Offense gets the ball back, then they take it down for a touchdown. Like, the confidence level of Notre Dame at that point was through the roof, I think, on both sides of the ball. So, yeah.
Right.
Yep. That's going to do it for our offensive kind of evaluation, watching the film. Make sure you hit that like button, that subscribe button, that notification bell, share with your family and friends, and, of course, jump on the boards.irishbreakdown.com. All kinds of good stuff is going to be coming up real fast starting tomorrow, so make sure you check that out, and you will get your money's worth in one day. I can promise you that. So check it out, boards.irishbreakdown.com. Our final segment tonight, Brian, let's jump in to the defense, and we're going to kind of do it the same way that we just did the offense. We're going to talk about what we liked, what we didn't like, and then the big moments as well. So right off the bat, Brian, what did you like from the defensive standpoint in this game as you look back at the film?
I love Josh Pate. That's my dude. I appreciate him coming on our show this summer. But he said something after the game where I'm a little confused, right? I'm a little confused because he had A&M ranked number 10 preseason, Notre Dame ranked number 8. He predicted Notre Dame to lose 10. This game, right? And then when they won the game, he doesn't think Notre Dame's any different. He said Notre Dame's good because of the sum of their parts. They don't have anything elite. And I was like, I don't know what you were watching, brother, but that's one of the best secondaries in the country, if not the best secondary country, because it is elite.
Yes.
It's not a bunch of veterans out there playing. They had 2 true sophomores starting in that game in the secondary. Why are they starting? Because they're NFL football players.
And they both made plays in this game.
They're NFL football players. Benjamin Morrison's a top preseason. I mean, whether you viewed Benjamin Morrison as a top 10 draft pick or maybe in the 20s, and there's some room for debate there. If you're a first-round draft pick, you're a dude.
Yeah.
You're elite. You're the best of the best. Xavier Watts is a unanimous All-American last year, won the Bronco Nagurski Award. I don't know how much more elite you can get when you have – how many people in the country have 2 DBs like that? Maybe Georgia, maybe Ohio State with Caleb Downs and Denzel Burke. Maybe a couple here and there, but there aren't many. That's an elite secondary. I mean, look, there's a lot of things Al Golden can do that are effective. He puts a lot on his secondary.
He does.
And he does it because they're that good. He didn't put that as much on the secondary in 2020. Go back and watch the film. The secondary had to do a lot, but early on, he didn't put as much on the secondary as he does now. Why? Because he can. And, we said all years, like, look, if Christian Gray is as good as we think he's going to be, this cornerback room is going to be filthy. And for at least one game, Christian Gray was every bit as good as it. He almost walked it off, Vince. He literally almost walked it off. He had to play red. If he just has a half a second sooner on that, it's a pick six.
Because the offensive kid got his hand in there just a little bit to break it up or whatever. But I mean, what a play! And honestly,
he's done it multiple times. He broke up a third down earlier where he undercut a crossing route and broke it up. Yeah.
Yep. I loved that play from just not only from the fact that he read it and all of that, but to take that chance, to step in front, because we all know what happens if you step in front and you don't make the play. At the very least, they're getting the first down, if not more, because it was zero coverage. It was zero coverage, and Golden was bringing the house. So he steps in front of that ball, and again, like you said, he almost walked it off, but he's got a pretty supreme confidence in himself for good reason. And that's one of the reasons he was able to make that play as well, because, you know that you're in zero coverage and you may not have anybody behind you to make a play if you don't.
Right.
You know what I mean?
But he doesn't – like a coach who his entire game plan with his front seven was don't do anything to give up a potential big play. Does the exact opposite when it comes to his coverage structure.
I know, right?
Because he knows they're not going to – like I watched the film. Their dudes are not going to beat our dudes.
Mm-hmm.
It's just as simple as that. And you know what I loved about what Al Gold did in this game? Even after Christian Gray got the early pass interference, it didn't phase him. And this here's the thing. They weren't perfect by any stretch of imagination. I mean, Christian had a play where he kind of lost his technique a little bit on a pedal and was late reacting to a little hitch route in front of him. And Adon was a little bit off on an out cut that they completed on him early. And that ended up going for or an in cut that went for a big play. And then Adon was a little bit off on a route by a running back. Fortunately, the running back on late in the game, the running back caught it and ran downhill underneath the first down marker.
Oh, that was shades of
right.
Sam Hartman, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But it was like, oh my goodness.
You got a better field awareness there, Le'Veon Moss. But so there's a couple things there. You know, Xavier Watts, I didn't think got up underneath an early in cut, but that's nitpicking. I mean, you're going to give up some completions. Sure. And they gave up 100 freaking yards passing on a guy that threw the ball 30 times.
Yes, and 40% completion percentage.
Yeah,
by the way. Yeah,
right. So, I mean, what do I like about this game? This secondary is even better than we thought it was going to be earlier. The only guy in the secondary that I thought didn't play very well was Jordan Clark. I didn't think he played. He didn't play bad, but he didn't play well either. But I mean, there were times in the game where they actually went with a 3 safety look in the game, Vince.
They started the game with that, didn't?
I don't think they started the game with it.
They listed Clark as a safety. Excuse me. I was looking at the start.
Well, what I mean by 3 safety, because Clark's a nickel.
Right.
What I mean by 3 safety look is they actually had Hurd, Watts, and Schuler all on the field together. Now they have said that Hurd is sort of the backup nickel, but the way they used him was more as a third safety. They would kind of roll him down a little bit more. Where with Jordan Clark, he travels.
Yeah.
Where when they would go motion with Hurd, they would kind of do a little bit of this. So
gotcha.
You could see that they treated it a little bit differently when Rod Hurd was in there. And I kind of liked how that group looked. And that was when Hurd came down and blew up an outside run. So the secondary was great last year, but what you and I said was all offseason, they're going to be more athletic at safety this year, and that was so obvious in this game. I love DJ Brown. Great kid. Adon Schuler in his first start had a game that was better than DJ Brown's best game in 6 years. And I don't mean that as I love DJ. DJ was a good football player for Notre Dame last year. He just doesn't make the kind of plays that Adon. Right. I'm not talking about the interception. I mean, that was a great play. Like, he played it perfectly. Like,
sure.
A lot of A&M fans are like, if he was open. No, he wasn't open. Adon was about to drive on that over route. If he throws the ball out there and throws it accurately and doesn't sail it, Adon drills that guy if he doesn't step in front of it outside that way. Adon had to stop when the ball got sailed.
Right.
So it wasn't, if you know football, you watch the way Adon, they were high-lowing it. And if he throws it out, Adon drives on the route and probably
at the very least makes a tackle.
He probably breaks it up. But
right.
Yeah, tackles a guy when he catches it, maybe, but he would have had to misplay it. They knew what was coming, how to defend it. But when the quarterback made the miss, it's like the Xavier Watts pick last year. Yeah, if the guy misses, you got to be prepared to, make that play. And so they did. But it's not just that. It's how fast he came downhill on a lot of other things, like blowing up that screen. Now,
one's out of control and missed.
We'll get that that I didn't like.
Right.
But, dude, it's like I always say, Vince, there's things that I'm okay making mistakes on because I can clean that up. And what you and I have said a million times is, if you're going to make a mistake, make it 100 miles an hour. And this 2 sophomore DBs did that absolutely.
Yes.
Christian Gray made some mistakes in this game, but he did it playing confidently and playing hard. Adon, same thing. Yeah. Adon's mistakes were you played a little too hard. And you and I have always said this, I would rather have to pull the reins back on a guy than be like, hey, man, I need you to go, man. I need you to go.
Yes.
And
that's why I had no problem with the way Adon was playing. I had no
right. Look, I mean, you have a problem as far as like you correct it and it's a minus, but like as far as like, dude, secretly as a DB, like, come on, Adon, you got to make that play on. He said, oh my God, this kid's gonna be so good. You know what I mean? Like,
yes,
you know what
absolutely.
I mean? Like, you can't tell him that,
right? Right.
On the inside, you're like, oh, we hit. Like, there's this moment as a coach, Vince. You know this when I don't know if it's like this in high school. So
it's different in high school because I know where you're going with this.
It's like when you recruit a kid and he gets there and you're just like, okay, we got it right. And it's like, yep, he's as good as we thought. But this was that moment for Adon because he did it in practice and all that, but that practice is practice.
Right.
The plays he made in this game, you're like, yep, we hit.
Yeah,
we hit. He's going to be good. And he's your what? 4th best defensive back right now. And then Jaden Mickey comes in. I did you think that was a PI on Jaden?
I mean, they were both handsy though.
But he tried to play exactly, and Jaden tried to play the ball. I didn't think that was PI, to be honest with you. I thought that was a bad call. But Jaden also came up and stepped up, and they threw like a little hitch in front of him. He drills the guy immediately, kind of body slams him a little bit.
Right.
I mean, just the whole second, I just thought Leonard Moore played in the game as well. I mean, he had this secondary is long, athletic, and fast.
Right.
And they got faster because Cam Hart's fast. I mean, Cam Hart's 6'3" and ran a 4.5 flat. That's fast.
Mm-hmm.
Christian Gray's a little over 6 feet, but he runs a mid to low 4.4. Don Schuler may only run a 4.55 or a 4.6, but that's still faster than what DJ Brown ran. Like, this defense got faster
right
than it was a year ago, and more playmakers, and that's kind of a scary thought. I mean, I'm nitpicking the pass defense. I'm like, I had to stop at one point. It's like, dude, they passed for 100 freaking yards. You know what I mean? Like, chill.
Exactly. Yeah, 100 yards and 40% completion. Like, that's a pretty darn good day. And, A&M fans were all up in arms about how poorly Connor Wigman played. Notre Dame's defense had a lot to do with that. Okay. I'm not saying he came out and played a perfect game or anything. I'm not saying that. He played bad and one of the major reasons was Notre Dame didn't allow him to get his feet set. They were putting pressure on him all day, and they were mixing up coverages, and guys weren't open. They weren't open. I mean, his completions were little swing passes and little dinks and dunks, and like guys weren't open.
People, A&M fans were, and ESPN people talking like the interception that he threw to Xavier Watts. This is a terrible ball. But the way Xavier played that ball, if he throws it higher, it's still picked off, except now Xavier has a chance to now take it back to the house.
Exactly.
Like, the fact he threw, I mean, like, honestly, the way Xavier baited him into that throw, if he throws it right,
veteran move.
He steps in front of it and literally takes it back to the house.
Yeah. Maybe
has one guy to beat. The fact that it was a low throw kept Xavier from turning that into a touchdown with like a minute to go in the half. Right? Because he just played. And what kind of play calling was that? That, hey, late in the first half, let's throw it Morrison and Watts on back-to-back plays. That's going to work out. Let's throw a deep ball against Benjamin Morrison. See how it goes. Hey, let's try to get our slot receiver to beat Xavier Watts. Let's see how it goes.
Yeah.
When exactly how you thought it was going to go.
Exactly how we knew how it was going to go.
Like, how you thought it should have gone.
Morrison's
locks the dude down, forcing completion, and Xavier picks you off. And fortunately, your quarterback threw a bad ball. Otherwise, he might have housed you on that play. Like, you'll learn. But here's the thing. You kept saying, like, hey, they're not going to throw up Benjamin. They're not going to throw at Xavier Watts. And they did. And
did not work out
too
well.
Work out.
Yeah.
So, note to future opponents. Yeah, Christian Gray's pretty good. Don Schuler's pretty good, but they still are probably your best bets to get some completions.
Gosh.
So, because number 0 and number 20, you just may want to just say, you know what? We're going to play 11 on 9.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Because we're not going at those guys. Yeah, that was my big takeaway, Vince, of what I liked. I mean, some other things I liked. I thought the linebackers have a lot to clean up.
Yes.
But they played hard, and they can run.
They're very fast, sideline to sideline.
Drake Bowen had about 9 or 10 plays where I'm just like, either the block destruction wasn't good enough, or he just wasn't quite as aggressive enough, because I don't know if he was quite sure. But as the game wore on and Drake got more and more into the flow, he started rocking offensive linemen. I mean, the play he had, and I've seen people put on Twitter where they ran counter, and his job is to blow up the puller. That's literally his only job.
Yep.
My job is not to make the tackle on the back. I'm the first line of defense on this particular play. My job is to make that guard wish that he would have had a cramp on the previous play. And that's exactly what he did. Destroyed that guy. And there was a play, Vince, near the goal line where you said he did something similar off the edge where he just destroyed a guy.
He was lined up in like a 9 technique, basically. Like he was playing outside, kind of on the line of scrimmage, and he just kind of behind the defensive line, but just kind of like shuffle.
Mm-hmm.
And he gets to the hole where the hole ended up being. And then all of a sudden, it's like he got shot out of a cannon. I mean, he comes downhill so fast.
Yeah, and
just shot out of a cannon, met the running back, and just dropped him right there. Like, I realized they scored on the next play, I think it was, but that one play, it was like, okay, Drake Bowen.
Yeah.
When you know you're right, when you're playing downhill and you're playing fast, and his like kind of quote unquote 0 to 60, like he was shot out of a cannon, man, when he met that running back. Like that showed me, it was kind of like your comment about Adon, like where you're like, hey man, you got to do this a little bit better, you got to do this a little better, but like, oh, he's gonna be real good.
Yeah,
like that was my feeling on Drake Bowen when I saw that play.
Yep, I just went. He was squeezing off from the backside, and he hit as soon as he hit the running back, the guy went down.
Oh,
yeah, he cut back
because he went, like I said, he went from like a standing position, like he was kind of shuffling down the line or whatever, but then just as soon as he saw it and read it, like boom, he comes downhill so fast.
On the touchdown run too, Vince. If you go back and look at that one, he's coming off the edge again, and they had a puller, and he did the same thing. The puller goes to hit Drake, and the puller goes like this. Guy's got 100 pounds on Drake Bowen.
Yeah,
literally. I mean, their smallest dude was like 325, and Drake's like 240. He's like that dude didn't want no part of that moving forward. Like no part of that moving forward.
Yeah, Drake Bowen.
Actually, I'm sorry, that was a tight end who's probably got 15, 20 pounds on Drake, but he thought he was going to hit him, and he goes like this. He's like, nope, I don't want any more of that action.
Yeah.
Kingston had a couple hits like that too. Like in like the play, like where Jalen Sneed comes downhill, he needs to see that play and then kind of bend it out to try to, but he just came straight at the guy, and the guy got outside of him. He grabs the jersey, the shirt and all that. But like, even if Jaden completely whiffs on that play, Jalen does, it doesn't matter because Kingston also read it and was right there and would have made the tackle.
Right.
But it's just like they rally to the ball. They run so well as a unit. Jaden Alsbury had an early mistake. He wasn't sure what was going on. I think it was a jet sweep. He wasn't sure where to go or how to that. After that, Jaden was great. I mean, so it's like, and this is kind of what I'm excited about when I'm going to write the article I'm going to write. It's just one game. So this is a bit of an overreaction, but it was against a pretty good team. I'm looking at that 23 class and the 24 classes of the kids who are playing. I'm like, they hit on that guy. They hit on that guy.
Right.
Like, isn't that one of the things we talked about before the season? It's like, okay, we're going to find out if Freeman and these guys actually know how to evaluate players.
Mm-hmm.
It was Christian Gray what we think, is Adon Shuler what we think, is Drake Bowen what we think, is Jaden Alsbury what we think, is Kingston William Austin. It was also our evaluations too, because you and I were both super high on Drake and Jaden Alsbury and Kingston coming out too, and Adon. But you're like, yep, he's a hit. He'll be a hit. I mean, yeah, there's things they got to clean up, but you're like, he is everything we thought he would be athletically and physically.
Yes.
Right. And Kingston is everything that you want to be. But at the same time, the instincts of those guys is there too. Like Jaden, Drake, and Kingston are really smart football players as well. And as we said to you guys before, but they're bringing it in either more explosive or bigger packages. And Drake certainly adds that beef.
Right.
And overall, I was very pleased with the play of the young linebackers. Again, a lot to correct.
For sure.
I would say pleased with their play, pleased with how they played.
Right.
Is that a better way of saying it?
Yeah.
Because there's a lot to clean up execution-wise. But it's like you live with some of that because you know they're going to get better, but you watch them and you're like, these guys are going to be really good. And they're going to be really good like soon.
Yeah. And we got a little peek into the future when Drake and KVA were playing.
Yeah, there was a couple snaps where we saw that, and there was a couple snaps we saw Drake and Jaden as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Like in not very long, it's going to be those three. I think are going to be sort of like what that 2017.
Yes.
Remember where they had Niles, Greer, and Tavon basically rotated, and then they finished, and then you had Drew Tranquil at Rover. And those guys finished first, second, third, and fourth on the team in tackles. And like the guy that didn't start, the guy that of the four the guy that started the fewest amount of games of that group
snaps, didn't he?
was Tavon. But not only that, Vince, but he led your team in tackles. He had 116 tackles, and he didn't even start half the games that year.
Right, because he could play any of the positions. Like
him and Greer would both kind of play both, exactly. But Tavon did both.
Yeah.
That's how they're going to be. And they said, look, sometimes coaches say stuff and you really don't know if they mean it. They said they were going to use a lot of those linebackers, and they absolutely
and they used them in big moments too.
Well, that's what Freeman said today, right? Yeah. Is like, we don't really look at it like, hey, we can't put those young guys in there. Like, this is the rotation.
Right.
And this is what we're going to do. And this is the matchup that we want against that personnel. Because it's not, when it said rotate, it's not just, well, this is the series you're supposed to be in. It's also partly, well, that's the personnel we wanted those two guys in the game against, and they're in that personnel, and so we're going to trust them to be that.
Yes.
and I love that.
And look, and I'm all hyped up about those 3 guys. There's no doubt about that. But you know what? The 2 veterans, and I'm Jalen Sneed. It's kind of a veteran in comparison.
Sort of, yeah.
I mean, sort of. He's kind of in the middle. Yeah.
Yeah.
But those 2 guys played well too. Like, Jack Kaiser was everything we thought he was going to be.
Speaking of guys that can run, and I actually thought Jack a couple times is a little bit tentative, and like he's still clearly getting used to playing in tighter quarters a couple times, which again is going to happen in an opener. But overall, like you said, Jack was pretty good. But Jack did a much better job than I don't know that I expected, because I didn't know what to expect. But just okay, what's he going to do getting guys lined up?
Yeah.
I don't know how he's going to do.
Never done it.
Right.
That's never been his role.
He did it last year against Central Michigan, and I think it hurt his play. He had 10 tackles, but I didn't think he was aggressive because he wasn't practicing it all season. I mean, that's why I thought it was a mistake to put him there. I don't think you should have put him in that situation, but it's not something he's had to do on a consistent basis, to your point, Vince.
Yeah. And
I thought he did a really good job. Like, there was a couple times like A&M would do something and he'd have to move a guy, and then he'd have to move him right back, and he knew exactly how to communicate. And
he knows his defense, man.
Yeah, he does.
There's no doubt about that. Like, and there was no hesitation with him moving guys around.
Yeah.
And his communication with the defense.
Yeah. And somebody asked if we saw Kingston playing Viper. No, that's just lining the linebacker up off the edge.
Right.
Is all that is. Just so people are clear.
That's what Jalen Sneed's done that in the past, and that's been a thing that they do. Yeah, for sure.
Yep. So overall, Vince, very pleased with what I saw from this group. Very pleased with what I saw from this group.
Let's hit a few items that you didn't like defensively.
Just 2 quick things I want to list that I also liked real quick. Is it's okay. The speed of the defense was even better than I expected.
Yep.
And I thought Al Golden did a good job finding answers. There was actually a couple things they did run game wise that were attacking the linebacker crashes. So Notre Dame would kind of show like they were coming, and A&M would kind of wait and then run into it, and they would actually pin them down. And then Notre Dame found some answers for that. So I thought Al Golden was really ahead of the curve. And I want to give a shout out to Al Golden too, because one of the biggest criticisms you and I had for him 2 years ago was you had some talented players that weren't playing that we thought should have played. This year, he's trusting those guys a lot more.
Yeah.
And it's paying off. He doesn't have to. Like, he could just ride, he could give Jalen Sneed and Jack Kaiser the majority of those snaps, or maybe he just trusts one of the young guys, Drake and Jack Kaiser, all those snaps, and then with Jalen Sneed and have that 3. He doesn't have to play Kingston. He doesn't have to play Jaden. They have enough guys to still have the same kind of rotation he had last year without those 2 younger guys, but he trusted them anyway.
Yeah.
And so I want to give him a shout out on that one. So I just wanted to make mention of those 2 things. And I thought the D line, I would have liked to see the D line be a little bit more productive and a little bit more disruptive, but I don't know that they necessarily turned him loose the way that I would have wanted him to either. But again, that was a personal preference. It's hard to argue with the results.
True.
Like, they ran a little bit more on Notre Dame than I would have liked for them to run on Notre Dame. I thought they leaned on Notre Dame a couple times. There's a couple times I felt like A&M went away from the run on some drives where they were kind of moving a little bit. But the thing with Notre Dame is that's part of what Al Golden's game plan was. Yeah, they may lean on us for a little bit, but they're going to make a mistake, whether it's a play calling mistake, an execution mistake, and we're going to capitalize to keep from scoring. But I thought they just gave up a little bit too many yards, I thought, in run game. In that type of regard as well. So, but they found answers every time that they would start to do something, they would answer back. And that's the thing that I liked.
Yes. And, they only had the 1 sack. So the, adjusted yards and everything, if you're going to do that, but like 3.8 yards a carry.
Well, and if you take out scrambles too.
Oh, good point. I didn't think about that. Yeah. No, that's actually a really good call. Cause what is it? Connor Wigman had 26 yards, but he had the -11 on the sack, right?
Right.
So that takes.
He had a net of 26 yards.
Yeah. Right.
So you take that out of the total. They only had 120 yards rushing for the backs, receivers, and stuff like that.
Wild.
Very good.
Yeah. Wild. Hard to be too terribly nitpicky.
In their pass game, they had rushing numbers. One guy had 6 catches for 31 yards. One guy had 2 for 13. It's like those are running back numbers.
Right.
Seriously, they had 100 yards on 12 catches, 30 targets,
that's
30
just
attempts.
Mind-blowing to me, but still happened. Things you didn't like, or did you just hit those just
No,
now?
I mean we hit the one on the run game. A couple big one, Vince, is they've got to look. They were able to get it, but they got to clean up the penalties and the missed tackles.
Yes.
Like
yes.
Honestly, A&M shouldn't have 13 points, and a lot of the 13 points came from you giving them extra plays, penalties and missed tackles.
Well, at first drive of the game, right? Their defense is poised to go 3 and out. They're sitting there looking at a 3rd and 7, and they jump off sides. Now it's a 3rd and 2, so it's a much more manageable 3rd down. I love 3rd and 7 if you're Al Golden, because there's a lot of things you can do and a lot of trust in your secondary, obviously, where I don't think A&M's going to hit that, right? 3rd and 2, different conversation. That's a lot easier of a 3rd down to manage, and they did.
It would have been 4 and out just because they did gain that 5th. They gained a 1st down on the first play, but it would have been like 3 and out after that.
Fair enough.
Your point stands. I just know sometimes.
No. You're absolutely right.
4 and out. So I just wanted to.
You're absolutely right.
But the other thing too, Vince, is like the pass interference that kind of moved, that helped flip the field. Even though they didn't score, they punted, but they flipped the field. So it can factor into the field position a little bit. There just was some stuff like that where you're just like, you gave them a little too much. And then the missed tackling, like Adon does a great job sniffing out that now screen. Great job. It comes flying down.
Yes.
And he misses that guy. And the guy, he has a chance to have a -3, -4 type of play. Guy ends up gaining like 2 yards on the play, Vince. I think something like that.
It was enough to put him in field goal range, wasn't
it?
Isn't that the one?
Was their second field goal that they had? So it was their. So it was third and 8.
Yeah, it was 3rd and 8. I got it right here.
He gained 5 yards in the play. It would have been at least -3. The ball was at the 37-yard line. You at least get a -3. Now that they're to 40, now all of a sudden, Vince, it's a 57, 58-yard field goal.
Right.
You're either going to go for it on 4th and 11, or you're punting and trying to pin Notre Dame deep. That missed tackle gave them points.
Yes.
And that happened a few times in this game. And that's something that's got to get cleaned up as well. That's something, if you watch college football this weekend, that's something that almost everybody struggles with in the openers nowadays, and it's been like that for several years because you just can't tackle
because of the way you have to run practices now.
That's right.
Yeah.
So, but those are things that obviously have to get cleaned up. I mentioned the run defense. I thought there were some early misfits in the run game, especially from the D line, but also the linebackers. They just weren't quite where they needed to be. But the way that the defense played, like they would just swarm. The linebacker would have a misfit, and Xavier Watts is right there to make a play, or Don Schuler or Rod Hurd, and or the D line would have a bad run fit, and the linebackers would kind of make up for it. I thought that was something that that they're gonna have to get cleaned up. Pass rush was disappointing. They didn't. They weren't, and a lot of it to me was the timing of a lot of the pass rush was like the twists were not timed real well. The linebacker pressures weren't timed super well, and I didn't think that necessarily that was great. I thought Jordan Botelho played a really good game. I was very impressed with Jordan Botelho. The rest of the D line was just kind of okay. It was just good. They weren't great. They didn't dominate. There was I thought Jason Onye did really well. Donovan didn't play quite as well. And look, that's just going to happen when you're 278, 275. There's just some matchups that just aren't great for you. And this is one of those ones. But you know what? He competed his butt off.
Oh, yeah.
He competed his butt off, but there's a couple drives where he was in the game and they said, hey, we're going to run right at 41 and get a little bit of a push. And when I mean got a push, they were getting like 6-7 yards, 4 or 5 yards instead of 2.
Right.
So it wasn't like they were crushing him. It just like they got a little movement on them. And that's something that's got to be, oh my gosh, that's something that's going to have to get corrected.
You still watching that game?
Sorry, TJ just threw a pick 6.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, sorry, they tackled him at the 7. So first drive of the second half. Anyway, so obviously that's something to get, but overall the timing is going to have to get a lot better. Like, did you think that, Vince? Like, did the linebacker, like they would show the blitz a little too early, and then A&M would see it and then check, and then sometimes they'd get out of it, but a lot of times they'd still stay in, and A&M was able to pick it up.
Sure.
I thought that's something that DJ and Maris did a great job of last year, was knowing
the timing,
and that's from depth,
because it wasn't good 2 years ago.
Right.
It got really good last year, but now you got a new set of linebackers, essentially. So like, it's going to take a second for I think them to kind of feel this out and get it to where it needs to be. But I agree with you. They allowed themselves to get picked up a little bit in some of their rush downs and when they were activated and things like that. Now, I think they were able to get in Wigman's face, and they were able to get him off platform and some things like, and either he's not good enough or wasn't good enough on Saturday to make plays when he was off platform, right? But so they were able to do that, but they need to get home more often. Like, and that's a defensive line thing. That's a linebacker thing. They need to be able to get home more. Yeah.
It's a game one thing too.
100%.
You know what I mean?
Yes,
but you can't just assume it's going to get better moving forward.
Correct.
So you have to still point it out, and that's something that they'll need to correct. Just I thought overall the timing, and then of course there was a couple early on, a couple out leverage situations that you want to, try to correct. But overall, it wasn't a huge issue. But those are just some of the things. And again, those are when you hold a team to 200, a Power 5 preseason top 25 team in their place, whose offensive coordinator apparently forgot how to play football according to their fans, but had a top 15 offense last year, top 15 scoring offense last year, a top 15 rushing offense last year. This guy knows how to coach football. Okay. He happened to run into a buzzsaw on Saturday, but he did some things differently than he did at K-State. When you're not under Chris Kleiman, who's an offensive guy, and he's going to want things a certain way, you get to put your own wrinkle on things. And so you're going to have some of that stuff, but now it's like Vince is like, let's clean it up. That's what it comes down to.
Oh, no, 100%. And you're right. You can chalk some of it up to first game and all of that. But again, we need to see the improvement moving forward.
Not everything gets better after first game, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Like Florida State's proven that tonight.
Right. No. Yeah.
Sometimes it gets worse.
Yeah. Sometimes it does get worse. I just find it hilarious that none of the A&M fans want to give any credit towards Notre Dame. Like it's just hilarious.
I mean, but you knew that was. I said this before.
I know, and I knew it too.
Say A&M's not that good, or this coach needs to be
right.
Fired. You knew they weren't going to give Notre Dame any credit, and honestly, Notre Dame's not going to get that till they beat Georgia or Bama. That's just the reality of it.
I will say that there was one A&M podcaster that I listened to. He had like a 15-minute kind of after the game rant, and I threw it on this morning while I was still in bed, and he was like, this Notre Dame team's really good. Like they made Texas A&M work for anything that they had.
Carter Correll's?
I don't know if it was black beard,
younger guy.
I'd have to look.
No, was on the show with Sean last week. Okay,
no, I don't think that was
Carter's
him.
Usually fair. Carter does a nice job.
I know what Carter looks like. I don't think that was him, but whatever. Bottom line is he is definitely a small voice in a crowd.
Very much so.
So I just want to put that out there. All right, before we wrap up, Brian, we do have at least a super chat, if not a couple more.
23 super chats, brother.
Okay, never mind. We got some super chats to get to.
Some of them are just comments from people. So, and then there's a big 5-parter from Michael S.
Oh wow. So, okay, let's do it. Nerd for life. Love that name, by the way. Thanks for the super chat. I love Jeter's reaction after the kick.
Own it.
He was
own it, brother.
Yeah.
I love it.
I know, right? Love it. I love Jeter's reaction after the kick. He was fired up. This is the culture Coach Freeman is installing. Swag.
Love
he
it.
was fired up, man, because that was a massive kick. Like that was the nail in the coffin of this game. Okay, because if he misses it, like
it was a little to the left of it wasn't like right down the middle, but it was pure. It was just
yeah. And he kicked it with confidence. Like there's no two ways about it. And he was ready to go. And again, I love the fact that Notre Dame let him come out for the post game press conference. I thought that was pretty cool. But anyway, so thanks for the super chat, Nerd for Life. Appreciate you. Daniel Flagstad, thanks for the super chat. For all you do, gritty win, solid D. More than solid, but I agree with you. Thank you, Daniel.
I think that was more of a understatement to make a point. Like, that don't suck. You know what I mean? Like, of course they don't suck. I know that's the point. So, I appreciate you, Daniel, very, very much, man. It means a lot. It means a lot.
100%. AST12321. Thanks for the super chat. Was surprised to see Paul Feinbaum did not try to diminish Notre Dame's win at all in the show he did on Sunday. Called it a big win.
Yeah, he did, and then he spent the next amount of time basically saying, "But nothing they're going to do the rest of the season is worth a darn." You know what I mean? And even when he said it, he just kind of had this dismissive tone.
That's such a backhanded compliment. That's
for Paul Feinbaum, it was a raving compliment of Notre Dame for him.
Fair.
But even kind of like, okay. I mean, it's kind of a compliment. But,
it's like when somebody apologizes to somebody for saying something.
I said with all due respect.
Yeah, right. Or it's like, well, I didn't
say whatever you want to me. It sure as heck does.
Right. Like, well, I'm sorry for saying it in front of you. You know, like,
right.
you know what I mean? Like, okay.
Yeah, it's like you say something bad about someone. I'm sorry you heard that.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what you're sorry about? Yeah, I think you are that, but I just didn't want you to know that I
didn't want you to hear it.
Right.
Uh-huh. That's what that felt like.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
whatever. Okay.
Yeah.
Tom Chris 2488. Thanks, Tom. Appreciate you. Do you think the lack of downfield passing attack was game plan driven due to young O-line, or should we expect more of a short to intermediate pass attack all year? Thanks, guys, and go Irish.
Yes and no. Yes on the first answer, no on the second. So yes, I do think it was somewhat game plan related. And I also think it was somewhat like, as a play caller, you got to get a feel for where your team is during the game.
Yes.
And I'll be honest, Vince, like if you watched Riley in pregame, he was missing dudes and routes on air. Okay. He was really amped up. He was sailing ball. I mean, and then you get into the game and he's short arming everything. He's rushing. I just felt like he's just not there.
Mm-hmm.
But again, he made plays late, but the plays he made late were kind of ISO reads. Like you're running snag against cover 2, probably throwing the corner. You're going the corner or the easy snag. So it's like the back shoulder, like it was designed to go there, and he hit those. So he made the plays when he needed to, but I just kind of felt like, hey, we have some answers that we think we can get to run game wise. I think that's what was going through Denbrock's head. And I don't want to take a chance of Riley throwing a pick or getting hit from behind or something that gives them cheap points. And because he just wasn't feeling it in the throwing game. But and I know that there was literally people on Facebook and the website saying that you needed to bench him, which is like, if you were saying that, just either A, probably best not to drink and text or chat or post on game day, or B, you just need to give yourself a timeout for a little bit from just
I did
on football for a while.
I did see one of those about,
but it's just like if you don't understand why this is why you brought in Riley Leonard, and this is the whole point, Vince. Yes, he needs to play better than he did on Saturday. He will at times, but he's the kind of guy that you bring him in because even when he doesn't have it throwing the ball, he can still do what he did. But also, you still have to defend him differently. If Sam Hartman had an off day throwing the football, you're effed. You're screwed.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of pressure to put on Sam. But with Riley, he can have an off day and it's like, okay, I don't have it today throwing the ball, but I'm still going out there and make some dang plays.
Mm-hmm.
And he did. But the way you have to defend him when he is in the game as a runner is partly what opened up some other opportunities for those other guys. And that's why you bring him in. And that's the point I made about the Clemson. Oh, he went 17 of 33 for only 107 yards against Clemson last year. I'm like, you didn't watch the game. He was an impactful player in that game. He almost rushed for 100 yards in that game.
And that's what you need. That's why you brought him in, because he's an impactful player. He impacts the game.
I mean, gosh, guys, Riley Leonard rushed for 63 yards against a defense that only gave up 108 per game last year and added Nick Scourton. Well, ESPN was saying, maybe I'm saying it wrong, I don't know, but they added the kid from Purdue. They added him to the defensive line. And you went out there and basically got 2/3 of the yards they gave up per game last year with your quarterback. And some of them were on scrambles, but a lot of others were on designed runs.
Which, by the way, when they do the design power run with Riley Leonard, where they pull a couple of linemen,
it's basically a buck sweep.
Yeah, like good luck. I mean, good luck.
Well, the only one they stopped him for 3 yards because he slipped.
Yes.
He goes for at least 5 or 6 on that one. Yeah, he slipped.
Yeah, he didn't get touched.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, talk about wanting to get the license plate of that truck. Like,
The second part of the question, Tom, is if they're going to do that all year, then they wasted a lot of time on throwing the ball down the field in fall camp.
Yes.
And in spring. A lot of time. I just think this is what you had to – and what did we say? Vince, I didn't care how they did it. I didn't care if it was 10-9. You just had to beat A&M. Yeah. That was the key. Mm-hmm. You got to win the game, and then you can fix other stuff. I mean, just win the freaking game, and that's exactly what they did.
Yep.
Smart. Look, perfect example. I'm a Broncos fan. 1997 Super Bowl. Elway just didn't have it in that game, so they rode Terrell Davis. Elway was missing throws, but Elway made the throws late in the game when he needed to. Mm-hmm. He made the runs, used his legs. Next year in the Super Bowl against Falcons, Elway was feeling it, and he tore the Falcons up. You got to be able to ride You have a game plan all you want, but if a guy's injured or a guy doesn't feel it that day, you gotta have some answers.
You gotta have answers.
National title game last year, Dylan Johnson goes down and he's not healthy, and Washington didn't have a whole lot of answers for what Michigan was slowing down their pass game. They didn't have a whole lot of answers. Notre Dame had answers on Saturday. Things weren't going the way that they probably designed it going in. You had to find some answers, and they found some answers and got it done.
Yes, they
got the win.
Yes, they did. Law Dog, thanks for the super chat. First time super chat. Thanks, Law Dog. Appreciate you. Listening to Coach D saved my mental health Saturday night. Quick question. I feel like Riley Mills isn't as dangerous as he should be. What's the deal with him?
There is no deal. He's a very good football player. Had some good plays on Saturday. Had some plays he wasn't. Not everyone's going to play great every single game. Now, we need to see Riley turn it on a little bit more consistently. That's the thing we've always said about him. But
sure,
Riley Mills is one of those guys, when he's on, you can't block him. When he's not, he's just good.
Right.
Like, Riley Mills is solid on Saturday. That's it. Wasn't great. Solid. Just you need him to sometimes be a little bit. It felt the same way by Howard Cross. He had that one great pressure and had another play where they tried to have a puller come at him and he just blew the guy up. Outside of that, he just was kind of there, but he did his job and that helped him win. It's going to be like that sometimes.
Right.
You need other guys to step up, and that's why they have the secondary did absolutely that. So, what's the deal with him? He's fine.
Yeah.
Now, is he going to be a great, like, because the expectations are so high, some people, when he's not elite, he's disappointing. Okay,
right.
Take all the expectations out, evaluate for what he does, and what he does. He's a good football player that at times is really good. He's never bad. He wasn't bad he was good on Saturday. That's it. Wasn't great. Just good. And you're gonna need moments like that. You need guys like that. But he's gonna have to flash a little bit more. But it shows how good this team can be that Howard Cross had that, one great play, but outside of that, Jack Kaiser was good. He didn't make a ton of huge plays. Just did his job. Okay, they didn't throw at Watts and Morrison that much. They made plays when they did, but okay, so what? Christian Gray steps up and make plays. Jordan Patello steps up and make plays. Josh Burnham did some good things. Boubacar did some good things. Drake Bowen, Kingston, Rod Hurd, Don Schuler. That's what great teams do, and that's what they did. I love it. This is I'm actually going to bring up his last. Michael S., we're going to bring up your 5-parter last.
Ooh, 5-parter.
Get to that last, buddy.
All right.
Save
Gumbo and Boudin. Thank you for the super chat. Appreciate you. How deep is A&M's D line? It looked like our O line was taking over at the 3:30 mark. If we would have had a few more minutes, it was going to get bad.
Yeah, if Notre Dame had a couple more series, they were going to. This was. I'm trying to remember who it was, but somebody in the chat or was on the message board last week said that they thought this game was going to be a lot like Oklahoma 2012, where it would be a close game early, but then they would the final score would be a lot more than it was because they would kind of pull away. And it almost was that. And to his point, if there was one more series, this thing would have got out of hand fast. But they played like they had 3 D tackles, they had 3 kind of true D linemen that played 47, 42, 59 snaps. Cassius Howell's kind of an edge player. He played 25. Ryland Kennedy played 15. Scourton played 55. So you had good depth there. You had good depth there. And they had to go. Look, you got to ride your beasts.
Yeah.
But they had good depth. It just, their conditioning as a team wasn't as good as Notre Dame's. Simple as that. And that played a huge role in this game.
Devere, thank you for the super chat. I have this as a top 3 win in Marcus Freeman's time at Notre Dame because we finally saw a team that took this game versus hope they didn't lose. Do you agree, or am I getting ahead of myself? Also, does Botelho comp Aaron Lynch?
Last answer, not at all. They're very different players. Jordan Botelho is barely 6'1", and just sort of a sawed-off, quick, short area guy.
Yeah.
Aaron Lynch was a freak, a 6'6", twitchy freak. So, no, they're not similar at all. First part, top 3 win of Marcus Freeman's tenure. I don't think you're wrong at all. Now, look, because again, just saying this is the biggest win of his tenure doesn't mean you're proclaiming they're going to go win the title this year. It doesn't mean that at all. when you consider the quality of the opponent, have they beaten better teams? Sure. I think that when you look at Clemson 2022, they're probably better than this team overall as a team, I would argue. When you look at trying to think of some of his wins in 2022, you had Clemson was a big one, right? I mean, were there any other wins from that season that you would put on the par with this one, Vince? I don't know that I would. I mean, Syracuse was a ranked team. Syracuse is actually ranked higher than this Texas A&M team was ranked, but I don't think that they weren't nearly as good as this football team. Do you think that they? I mean, I don't think that they were. They finished the year. They were ranked higher, but that doesn't mean a whole lot to me. I mean, they were ranked 16th when they played Notre Dame. I would much rather play that team any day than this team, than A&M, no question. You agree with that, Vince?
Oh yeah, no. I have this win from Marcus Freeman right now as his biggest win of his career. I just because of where it's at in the season, what was on the line. It's year 3. It's on the road. The environment, the fact that, you've got all these young kids that are playing. These are your kids that are playing. Like, you stack all of that. To me, this is his biggest win. Now, as the season progresses, there's going to be bigger games and bigger wins if he wins them.
Maybe. Yeah.
I'm talking about postseason.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, but right now, I think this is his biggest win. That's me. That's where I'm
That's fair. I think I will say it's number 2 for me. I just went through all his games. Number 2 for me because for a couple reasons. One is everything you said about it. Really good team, talented team, SEC, on the road. Nobody thinks you can win. Crazy environment, blah, 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 blah. And it was a pressure-packed game.
Yeah.
Like, nobody thought they were going to beat Ohio State in 2022, and they didn't. And so nobody crushed them for it. But, like, you'd have got crushed. Even though nobody expected you to win, if you'd have lost, they'd have crushed you for it.
Yeah.
Crushed you for it. You're in year 3. And, so that was huge. The reason I'm going with Clemson is twofold. Number one, Vince, I think they were a better team. And, yes, it was at home. But the other thing about that, Vince, is you're sitting there at 5-3. You're still have sort of the sting, the stink of the Stanford game is still lingering over you. The UNLV game didn't make it go away. The Syracuse game made people feel moderately better. Beating Clemson, who was ranked number 4 in the country at the time, in November, saved your first season. And sometimes, Vince, if you don't survive your first season, you may never get the momentum to survive it. And the only other game, as I look at it, Vince, the only other game to me that I would say, like the Cal game was huge because, like, you were 0-2 and you had to freaking get a win, but it was not a very good team. So, like,
sure.
That's not like. But the South Carolina game to me was another one that I would consider is like the next in line potentially, simply because for similar reason, and I'm trying to compare it, is because you desperately needed that win at the end of the year to go 9-4 instead of 8-5. And that momentum you got from that, and I think it carried into next year, and maybe some of the transfers don't come play for you if you're coming off of an 8-5 year. You know what I mean? So,
sure. Oh yeah.
So like that's and the point I'm making is that stuff matters into the bigness of a win as well. It's like the Utah win for Notre Dame in 2010. Does Kelly's team ever really truly recover from the bad losses early that year if they don't beat Utah? I don't know. I don't know. So those are other ones, but I think the top 2, Vince, for me are Clemson 2022 and this game. Quality of the opponent, environment, pressure of the game, national TV.
Yeah.
In a state you're trying to recruit like crazy.
Yeah.
Like, there's a big recruiting statement win on that one as well. So, Vince, I have a number 2. I'm not at all going to disagree with you. Like, I'm not going to debate you on why my take is right or yours is wrong, because I think they're both huge, and it just comes down to, okay, I think there's a good case to make for both of them, in my opinion. You may not think that there's a good case for Clemson 2022, but I
think there is. No, I absolutely do. And I just hope that we're, 4 months from now, you and I are having a conversation about the fact that the 2 games we're talking about right now are in the top 5.
Yeah. Because, like, I think NC State quality opponent is kind of close to this game. But it's just not. It wasn't the same
But
moment. There
yeah,
wasn't.
exactly.
People kind of thought it's
Yes.
NC State. You know,
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
even though the quality of the team is similar,
Right.
40,000 less people at the game. Not SEC.
Right.
You've dominated the ACC. Perception wise, it just didn't have the same
exactly
pressure on you.
Yes.
As a team, as players, as that. Even though the opponent's not a whole lot different, I think it's very similar.
Agreed. But I think that everything else that's surrounding it makes it that.
And that stuff
bigger.
matters, Vince. It's why,
yes,
playing a football game at Florida International or Duke or Arizona State or Northwestern, where the kids transferred in from. Yeah, you played in some big stuff, but there was never the pressure on you to win the way there's pressure at Notre Dame. And when
100%.
you're playing an SEC team, and the perception is that you're playing another quote unquote blue blood or traditional powerhouse or whatever. You could argue if either of those things are true, that's the perception because they're in the SEC. It adds more pressure to you. Whether the opponent pressure isn't always about the quality of the opponent. Pressure can also be about the external stuff too. I think it's a great point, Vince.
Yeah, and look, we've been talking about this game specifically for the last 8 months, Brian.
Yeah, they needed this win.
You know what I mean? We have been talking about this game forever. That adds more pressure. Yeah. That NC State game was a few games in. You know what I mean?
That was game 3, right?
Yeah, it just makes it different. That was their first, excuse me, that was the first big road test of that year. No doubt.
But they were unranked at the time.
Right.
They finished in the top 25, but at the time they were unranked. It's an afternoon game against a team everybody thinks you're going to beat. It's such a different set of circumstances. Even though the quality of the teams to me is very similar, completely different set of circumstances.
Trevor Rocket, thank you so much for the super chat. Trevor, really appreciate you. Good evening, lads. What improvements are you expecting from week 1 to week 2 at home against Northern Illinois? Brian, one player you want to see this upcoming Saturday. Same question for you, Vince. Keep it up, lads.
Biggest thing for me when you go from week 1 to week 2 is just clean up some of the technical mistakes. The fit issues, the route stuff, the missed angles on blocking. You want to see Riley the big thing for me is I want to see Riley start to kind of get a little bit into a rhythm, throwing the ball at some point in time, get on the same page with the receivers. Those are kind of things that you want to see from week 1 and 2. Like if Notre Dame would have beat A&M the way that they could have, I would actually be a little nervous about this game being a convincing win, but a sloppy convincing win.
Sure.
Where maybe it was a little closer early and the offense would have been sloppy. But because your offense struggled the way that it did, you're going to get ridden pretty hard this week in practice.
Yeah.
There's no overlooking it. And also, if you're at all a competitor, you want to go out there and prove something.
Absolutely.
So, unfortunately for Northern Illinois, I think they're going to get a little bit of a pissed off Riley Leonard this weekend. Maybe even a pissed off Chris Mitchell or Jay.
They're not happy with their performance.
I think the only guys that are kind of happy with their performance from Saturday is probably Jeremiah. Well, even not just Jeremiah Love. I don't know if Jadarian. He's probably happy with the big run, but he's probably also frustrated that every other time he touched the ball, you had a penalty called it back, or you were getting hit as you were touching the ball. You know what I mean? That'd be frustrating for him. He literally got 2 clean pockets the whole day, and he went for over 40 yards on both of them. Think about that. That's your quote unquote number 2 back.
Right, exactly.
This is what we said, Vince. This is a 1A, 1B, guys. This is not 1 and 2. This is 1A, 1B.
And it just depends on the game who's going to be the guy. I mean, you might get both today, or Saturday.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was big.
Feels like today.
Trevor, we're still praying for you, man. We hope you're doing great, man. And
for sure.
We're glad you're sticking with us, buddy. I'm definitely good to get that win on Saturday. There's no doubt about that.
Tyler, thanks for the super chat. I love the trash talking from the young O-line. I want the big guys to have attitude and good performance. I have to say, I think it was Knapp that blew the kiss. Did you see that?
No, I didn't.
It was in the little recap video that Notre Dame football put out
on the touchdown
just before our show started, about an hour beforehand. And it was the environment where Marcus Freeman.
Oh yeah, we control the noise.
Yes,
yeah,
it was in that. He's blowing a kiss to the.
Was it at the end of the game after the last touchdown?
It was too zoomed in to know when it occurred.
That's freaking great.
But now, dude,
yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah,
they got some. Yeah.
Okay. So I just had a little bit of a panic attack. I saw Teddy Rizak just tweeted something out, and it had that, thing where guys will write a note and then screen. I'm like, he's transferring already?
Oh, yeah. What? What did he put in there?
He's partnering with the Boys and Girls Club.
Oh, good for him. That's awesome.
And he'll be providing 2 tickets to every Notre Dame home game for a parent and child.
Awesome.
And that's awesome. And he's using his NIL for that. I love that. I totally support Teddy doing that. We actually gave a big chunk of our Thanksgiving fund from 2 years ago to the Boys and Girls Club. So love that he did that. But it just was funny because I was going to Twitter to find that video because I want to see him do that. And I saw, oh, it's the first time I was like, oh, come on, Teddy, you're leaving after one game. Because isn't that sad that that's kind of what you see that and you just automatically think it's a decommitment or something bad. Respect my decision, and I respect that decision to partner with Boys and Girls Club. That's for sure.
Yeah.
So, so those are different. I mean, that was pretty. So I'm sorry I had that little panic attack, but
that's funny,
because I really like Teddy's potential. But I want to try to find that play. But
it was just like
what I was going to say was, if you're an offensive lineman that talks trash, or even you better flip and back it up, because otherwise you're Will Campbell, incredibly talented offensive lineman. People talk about him being a potential first, like top 10 NFL draft pick. And he is, he's not overrated. He's excellent. But he talked a lot of he talked about like, we're going to get in a fight and this blah, 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 blah. And we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And I was like, okay, you're going to say all that, talk all that noise. You better go out there and ball out.
Yes.
You know what I mean? You better go out there and ball out, because there's nothing I hate more than a player that talks trash and doesn't back it up. It's even magnified when it's an offensive lineman. May not be fair.
I know, but you're not wrong. But you're not wrong. Yeah. Were you able to find that video?
I'm about to watch it now. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. You definitely got to watch it, because first of all, I do love the fact that Notre Dame puts out these little snippet videos really where you get some coach speak in there, and you just a little bit of a peek behind the curtain of what's going on in that moment. Like I dig that. I really do really enjoy that. And then you kind of get some personality of these players as well, because, we don't get to talk to every one of these guys every single week. So it's nice to see, some of that personality and all of that as well. So I do. We've talked a lot about how Notre Dame Fighting Irish Media, like, you've got this great group, like, use it, put out some more stuff, put out more videos, put out more. And I think they're starting to do a better job of that. And so I do really like the one they did after the Duke game, this one, like, I do dig what they've been up to. So I think this,
I also thought the first 2 episodes of the Peacock series were excellent.
I did too. I wish we didn't have to wait until December to get the rest.
Yeah,
because
which I get. I
do.
Totally get it, because you don't want to give bulletin board material, and the other thing too is you're not going to be able to go too in depth if you got games to play. You're not going to let people. You're not going to give. So if you really want the in depth stuff, you better, be patient. But I'm with you. I'm like okay, I'm wet.
Yeah.
It was Sam Pendleton that did it.
Was it Pendleton? Okay.
Yeah, he went like this. Yeah.
Yes.
That's not good. A boy that I'm going to want to piss off.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Just hope he hits the wrong guy. Because if he hits me, I'm going down, and I won't wake up till December.
Right. ABCDEF. Thank you so much for the super chats. It's a great show, and go Irish.
This is actually a very creative name, if you think about it. Like, you know what I mean? Like ABCDF. Because to think about, like, what could, you know what I mean? You get the thought process has to go through your mind to actually get to that is kind of funny. I'm giving him a lot of credit on that one.
That's great.
Thank you.
Hugh Murtha. Thank you so much for the super chat. How did Riley Mills, Armel Mukam, and RJ Oben play? Any other notable performances for the second or third string players?
I thought Jason Onye had a good performance. I thought Jason played well in his snaps. He played. I was surprised he didn't play more. Good Lord. It's my alarm to give Rita her meds. I was surprised that Onye didn't play more, but he only played 18 snaps, and Donovan Hinish played 26. I was a little surprised by that. But I thought Jason was pretty good when he played. I thought Josh Burnham definitely outplayed RJ Oben. I definitely thought that. I didn't think RJ Oben was just kind of okay. Not bad, not just kind of okay. But I thought Josh outplayed him. I don't believe Armel Mukam played in the game. So Riley Mills was good. He wasn't great. He was solid. He wasn't,
solid. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, that's my take on those guys. But yeah, Patelho was really good. He was a starter though. I thought I didn't notice Junior Tuihalamaka in the game. I don't believe he played. I thought Boubacar as a backup played well. I thought Boubacar had a couple pressures and he was disruptive and had a couple. I think he was one of the guys that jumped off sides on one of them, Vince, as well. But overall, he was pretty good. It was pretty good.
Jimmy Page with the super chat. Thank you very much, Jimmy. Our DBs are elite. Our running backs are elite. Am I wrong?
No.
Nope.
And if they can get Mitchell Evans back to good health, that'll be another elite position. That was what was so kind of puzzling about Josh's comment. And maybe it's because but like Josh looks at recruiting rankings, and even if you're someone who looks at recruiting rankings, but this is my point though. Even if, and again, this is not I'm not trying to take a shot at Josh Pate. I really like Josh Pate, and again, he came on our show and did a great job. But even if you're going to look at recruiting rankings, you should still probably come to the conclusion that you did. I mean, Christian Gray was basically a top 100 player coming out of high school, and this maybe part of the problem is the only service that didn't have Christian Gray ranked high was 247 Sports, who's affiliated with which is who he works for. So maybe he only looks at their rankings. They had him ranked as the number 203rd player in the country, which is, kind of dumb. But, I mean, he was a top 100 player. He was on the composite rankings. He was just outside the top 100. And they didn't even have Benjamin Morrison ranked in their top 247. So, I mean,
wow.
But like a Don Schuler was another guy that was I mean, these aren't 3-star kids that panned out. I mean, these are consensus 4-star recruits that are consensus ranked in the top 250 type of guys. I mean, the Don Schuler, I'm actually looking at it. Don Schuler was not in top 247's top 247. Maybe he's looking at recruiting rankings and just not giving them the credit that's due. So, yeah. So, yeah, I don't get that one, but they got 2 elite positions now. And if Mitchell Evans is back to health, they'll have 3.
Joe Popati. Thanks, Joe. Appreciate the super chat. Thank you for the show, guys. Late to the show. And if this has been said, I'm sorry, but this game could have been a 20-plus point win. Many missed shots.
Agree completely. We did talk about that. The only thing that I'll say is people that are using that as somehow to be negative about, and I'm not saying Joe's doing this. I've seen people do this on the board. Well, yeah, but they didn't do this, this, and this. So I'm like, guys, that's a bad way of looking at this game. Yes, clean stuff up, but think about this. They didn't play great, and they still won by 10 and should have blown this team out.
And dominated dominated the fourth quarter. You know what I mean? Yeah, agree.
Right.
Would have been better for my, physical health if they would have done that. But,
right. Just real quick, Michael S., where was Riley Mills and RJ Oben in this game? Michael, we did talk about that, but I did want to recognize your super chat. We'll have a couple more of yours coming up here soon, but I did want to
appreciate that, Michael.
Yep. Charlie Weiss, the last belt loop, lifting weights while listening. Get that swole on, my friend. Get in shape. I appreciate you. Thank you for that one as well. And then now here's another one, Lou from Vince from ND Lou.
I'll take the compliment. ND Lou 22. Thank you for the super chat. It's funny how the Notre Dame defensive tackle was able to close on the SEC quarterback for an unassisted sack, while A&M had multiple untouched blitzers and couldn't get it done.
That's why you bring in Riley Leonard.
Yeah.
And that's
I said it earlier, right? Like Riley Leonard outran the entire front seven at one point of Texas A&M and got to the corner. It's like he's just running away from guys, and he does it in an effortless manner. It doesn't look like he's trying to run that fast. He just does.
He's just an athlete. He's just really athletic.
He's just really athletic, and it's a
really athletic team, Vince.
I know, and I'm just happy he's wearing a gold helmet. I'll just say that. So
agree completely.
Mm-hmm. Tyler Evans, thanks for the super chat. My girlfriend just said she should have waited on the Florida State tickets. They could have been cheaper, and this is why I'm asking her to marry me.
That's actually a great response. It's like, yes, I love this woman. I really do love this woman.
That is fantastic.
I'm with you.
Tyler.
You got a good one, Tyler. You definitely got a good one.
Well done.
That's such a great response. I should have freaking waited on these tickets. These guys suck. They would have been way cheaper. That's awesome.
Ronnie Reeves, thanks for the super chat. Do you think Denbrock should move to the booth in order to see the entire field? You can't always see the backside from the field view. He doesn't need to.
No.
He has Gino Gaduli looking at it for him, number one.
He's done both in his career, Vince. He was on the sidelines at Notre Dame. He definitely wasn't 15, right? I remember watching those videos that they did that year in the season with. I'm pretty sure he was on the sideline. He was on the sideline for most of his career at Cincinnati. The last couple of years, they were really good. He was up in the booth. And then he was up in the booth at LSU. So, I mean, I said, guys, it's about where your comfort is. If you have people you trust up in the booth.
Exactly.
And he does, because he's worked with Gino for 5 years.
Yep.
Then, there's, especially now with the talent. So I was telling Tim Priester, we were talking about this on the game. I said, there's a lot of things with the communication. You want to make sure you're right there in case you need to fix something. They want to press the tempo more. So I want to be down there to, number 3 is with those tablets. I want to be down on the field where the tablets are so I can walk guys through stuff, not telling Gino what to tell that guy or I want to be able to do that. So I think there's a lot of reasons why. I've always been a booth guy, Vince. I may change that now with the new rules of some different things to be down there because of the tablets and stuff. So just some thoughts on that. But there's not a right or wrong answer, guys. There's not one's better than the other. It's just
there's not. And I do think that people put way too much stock in that decision of where guys are going to be. It's 100% a comfort level thing. I've been around coaches that prefer to be on the ground. I've been around coaches that prefer to be in the booth. Both are good. Both are bad. Like, it just depends on you're either a good coach or a bad coach. Doesn't matter where you're coaching from. It's a comfort level situation. I personally like to look my guys in the eyes and have those conversations with guys. That's me. Right. But as an assistant, though,
when I was just a receivers coach, and when I was a running back coach, especially, I liked being on the sideline. When I became more of like the pass game coordinator and our head coach was calling plays, I liked being up top so I could see things and relay them to him. And just, again, what's your role? That's the other thing
that's a good point. And I did like being in the booth, though, when I was the eyes for the play caller.
Right.
You know what I mean? So, So it just depends on how
you tell them, I know that. I'm seeing the same thing you're seeing.
Michael S., thanks for the super chat. Really appreciate it. What was the difference from the way Notre Dame played A&M and Duke last year?
First of all, the defense was every bit as good as it was last year, if not better than it was against Duke. And number 2, the defensively, they didn't have to play Riley Leonard. That's another part that helped. Offensively, Vince, it was very simple. What was the first thing I said about what I liked about this game?
The offensive line competed.
The whole team, they competed. We had receivers not competing for balls. As a whole, they just competed. And when you compete, your talent takes over. Yes. Even when you're not miscues, if you're way more talented and you just play hard, you're going to win and win convincingly.
Yep.
They physically got their butts kicked by Duke. The offensive line did.
Yes, they did.
And the receivers did to a degree. They got their butts kicked.
Yep.
And this team kicked butt.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the biggest difference.
Agreed.
That simple, right, Vince?
It really is. It really is. And the one of the reasons that Duke, I can't remember if I said this in Sean's show or this one, but one of the reasons that, number 1, Duke was in that game but didn't win, Riley Leonard put that team on his back and did everything he possibly could to help Duke win that game. He just didn't have the guys around him to beat Notre Dame. Now he did the same exact thing for Notre Dame, but now he's got guys around him that can complement what he does.
Yeah.
That's the difference. Like, Riley Leonard's still the same guy, but he's got guys around him now.
If I can beat this guy in a fight, and I can beat that guy in a fight, and I can beat that guy in a fight, and I can beat that guy in a fight, and that guy in a fight, that doesn't mean I can beat all 5 of them in a fight at the same time.
Right.
But if I got I got 4 of my boys that are just as good as me, and we're all better than them, then we're going to win that fight. Exactly. Right? Like, last year was, they had Riley Leonard, but Notre Dame had Audric Estime, Joe Alt, and Howard Cross, and Xavier Watts, and Benjamin Morrison, and J.D. Bertrand, and Maris Leofow, and Riley Mills, and Javante Jean-Baptiste, and Mitchell Evans. And they had Riley Leonard and Dwayne Carter.
Yeah.
Like, that was it. But they outfought and out-hit Notre Dame. A&M didn't do that. But A&M battled. It's not even about A&M. It was about Notre Dame. Mike Elko's team played just as hard for him Saturday as his Duke team played for him last year.
I absolutely agree.
He just faced against a way better version of Notre Dame than he did last September.
Yes.
That's the difference.
Yes. David Kirkpatrick, thank you so much for the super chat. Hey, Ivy fam. Loving the show, I'm loving how there's a lot of work, but
I'm sure he's loving the show too.
Yeah, I know. It's getting late for me.
Yeah.
I'm loving how there's a lot to work on, but the soul of this team is healthier than it's been in a long time. And we started off with a statement win to turn an important corner.
Absolutely, David.
Completely
I mean, you
agree.
nailed it.
Completely agree, David. Nailed it.
Yep. Now we got this 4-parter from Michael S.
Okay.
So I'm going to bring them all up and you just read through them.
Strap it in. Okay, here we go. Michael S., thank you for the super chat. Part 1.
Chats. Just thank them for all of them now, Vince.
Okay. I didn't realize they were all super chats.
It's going to end up being 90. Yeah, 4 of them. It's going to be 90. They're all
Thanks,
super
brother.
chats.
Appreciate you so much. Post-game show with Vince, Trev, Ryan Roberts, and Sean was precise and rational in their assessment of the game. Saw other podcasts didn't come close. Thank you for that, Michael. Appreciate that. Part 2. Then Brian came with the quote-unquote rant, which wasn't.
When I first read this, Vince, I was like, uh-oh, this is not going to be good for me. It's like when you say then Brian, it's kind of like, and then he ruined the whole dang thing. That's what I thought he was going to say.
Oh, that's great.
Yellow paranoid.
Oh,
Sorry.
that's great.
Go ahead and read it again.
That's so funny. Then Brian
But you see where I'm coming from?
I do.
Where he had that great compliment, and then it's then Brian.
And then he
came
in with the rant that wasn't. I was like, ooh, ouch.
Yeah.
And he sliced and diced all those who did not see that this was a new program, not whether we'd win or lose, but that this program is now operating at a different level.
Freeman.
Part 3, Freeman. Yep, Freeman. Freeman had finally got a professional coaching staff, not a learning on the job OCs, which more than anything gives me great confidence in the program. I like that.
Agree.
And then the big one from Michael, Part 4, reminds me of excitement in my senior 64-year start of era at Wisconsin, where I finally saw what it was like to have a true, competent coach and staff change the whole direction of Notre Dame football. Brian, you have a very competent and classy staff. Wow.
I agree.
Thank you, Michael.
I agree.
I appreciate that very, very much. Yeah. Very, very much. The post-game show was a lot of fun.
I do.
And there was a lot of really good opinions in that show, man. Like, we had some fun.
I've gotten a ton of compliments on the job Trevor's doing.
Like, yes, me too.
Actually, he does a really good job. And then getting him and Ryan together for some shows, and then bringing Sean Davidson. We're trying to really mix it up. And I thought it went really well, to the point where I'm like, I'm not even going to jump in. I don't even know that I'm going to jump in for my rants very often. I'm just going to kind of let you guys do your show, and then I'll just record something later to put on the board or something. You know what I mean? Like, it was really good. Really, really good. And Michael, thank you for all those super chats, man. I mean, look, there's a lot of people that feel that way. Like, they wanted Marcus to be the guy, but did they really have the full evidence of it? And I think this win, for a lot of people that kind of had the BK PTSD and the we don't win those games and all that, I think this was sort of a, hey, maybe this is the real deal, you know? Yeah. And you know, I'm digging it. By the way, Michael, that first year, they beat Wisconsin at Wisconsin 31-7, but Wisconsin wasn't a very good team. It just more of like I saw it, and you're like, okay, this is different.
Yeah, right.
This is different, and that was kind of the point that he was making. And Notre Dame was unranked going into that game, Vince, and then jumped up to number 9 after the first win. So
wow,
but
wow,
yeah. And then we just had another super chat pop up, Vince, here at the end.
Dolly Madison, thank you so much for the big old super chat.
I knew a girl in college named Dolly Madison.
Did you really?
Yeah, but I think she spelled her name differently. But yeah,
okay. Did she like to sew?
I have no idea.
Okay, just checking. With so many players getting money
like that.
With so many players getting money,
you made me a couple sweaters.
Do you think they might? I can't even talk. I was thinking of.
Did you like to sew? What the heck are you talking about? Ben So needs a nap. It's like an hour past his bedtime. Does she like to sew? Are you referring to like James Madison's wife?
No, I was thinking of like Betsy Ross, who sewed the American flag.
You thought Dolly Madison, and then that led you to Betsy Ross.
That's where I'm at right now. Just let it go, Brian. I'm so cutting this out. I have so much power. All right. Getting slap happy over here. I'm going to start over.
Nope. Start over with Since Dolly gave us a giant super chat, I want to respect the question.
I got to totally
I just
respect
couldn't get past the she liked it so
let it go. I don't even. Good thing I don't have the chat open right now.
I'm gonna mute myself.
Dolly Madison with a massive super chat. Thank you very much. With so many players getting monies from NIL, do you think they might consider staying to get their degree? Great win Saturday and go Irish.
That is definitely happening in Notre Dame. And honestly, Dolly, that was happening before NIL. What I think true. NIL does is I do think it somewhat makes it even more advantageous for certain guys to stay, at least to a certain point, to where it's like, hey, look, I'm going to get, I mean, if you're just on the team, you're getting like 20 grand a year just for being on the team.
That's crazy.
And the more you play, like, okay, I'm a backup, so maybe I get 30 or 40 or, those type of things. But yeah, I think there's some incentive to that because there's monetary value to staying, but then also the what's the right word I'm looking for? But more the intrinsic value, the future value, right? It's kind of like the futures bet, which a degree gets you, so I think it helps. And that's why you don't see Notre Dame losing as many guys as certain people do. And when they do, it's usually younger guys, right? A lot of the guys that transferred out this year were either guys with degrees or really young players, like freshmen and sophomores. Like Nana had a degree, Tyree had a degree, Michael Carmody had a degree, Ramon Henderson has his degree. I mean, you know what I mean? Like a lot of those guys have degrees. And the other guys that left were true freshman Rico, true freshman Braylon James, sophomore Tobias. And so Tobias didn't want to leave. Tobias needed to leave because of kind of what he was put through. He needed a fresh start.
Yep.
And I'm not saying that as a shot at Tobias. I'm saying that as a shot at his horrible joke of a position coach. So I understand him, but that's usually the thing. So that's kind of my stance. But yes, I do believe that the academic piece is certainly something that is encouraging kids to stay. And I think it only gets enhanced with the fact that you can now give them money.
Oh, yeah.
And
yes.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, in the past, and I'm not saying anybody specifically or whatever, but there were cases in the past where a guy, felt like they had to leave to take care of their family or, whatever. And it was a dire situation from a financial standpoint. And they had to get out and, try their hand at the NFL. And I get that, right? They don't have to do that. That's not going to be an incentive anymore. Like they can at least get by, quote unquote, with some of the monies that they're getting via NIL. And, that does make a difference and it does keep guys here and, all of those kinds of things. And so, yes, I believe that is accurate.
Thanks again for the super chat, Dolly. I appreciate it.
That is awesome. What a great question too. Really appreciate that. So are we out?
Makes me want to go wave my flag. I need to go put a sweater on.
You know what?
I'm sorry. Go ahead. Take us out of here.
Lucky you signed my checks.
You cut this part out. You can cut this part out. Pause. You can pause. Cut it out and then just do the outro. I'm sorry.
It was such a good show. It was such a good show up to that point, and I completely lost it with that comment. It's okay. It's okay.
I love you, Vince.
It's all right, man.
Oh.
It's okay. It's okay. I can take it. All right. I can take it. Thanks, everybody, for hanging out with us. Really appreciate you joining us on our first Upon Further review of the 2024 season. We're going to have a lot of fun this year. Starting next week, we'll be back in our normal slot on Sundays at 7 o'clock. So make sure you join us then, and we'll be breaking down the Northern Illinois versus Notre Dame game, first home game of the season. So make sure you hang out with us on Saturday. Normal, slate of shows coming up, during the afternoon and in the evening with IB Nation Sports Talk. So make sure you're hanging out. We'll start previewing Northern
Mailbag
Illinois.
Will be the one difference this week. That'll be Friday.
Yes, that's right. Yep, mailbag will be on Friday. So lots of good stuff coming. And then, of course, the post-game show on Saturday and Upon Further review on Sunday. Make sure you hit the like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, share with your family and friends. And, of course, join the boards.irishbreakdown.com. There's going to be some great film breakdowns over on the board. We're not going to do those on YouTube.
Days. I'm going to do offense tomorrow, get some defense, maybe the rest defense out on Thursday. It's going to be good stuff.
And that'll be a trend that will take place throughout the season. So you're not going to get it unless you're
analysis as well, deep dives into the – I've already broken the game down. Just to give you people on the chat a taste of what you're missing out on here if you're not on the boards. Just going to put this over here, Vince. This is the kind of stuff I'm breaking down, and I'll use all this to create some data here. So just so you can get a glimpse, if you're not on the board, I turn all this stuff into articles. That's a breakdown of the Notre Dame game. My intel, not that stat, or my stuff, my information, not the stats. I call things what I call them. But go use all this stuff to do a thorough, deep analysis of the team. So that's the stuff you're missing out on if you're not a premium member.
So there you go. Got to get on the boards. Boards.irishbreakdown.com. You will not be unhappy with your choice. So for Brian, I'm Vince. We'll talk to you next time on the Irish Breakdown Podcast.